will call the meeting to order. A few moments to talk about meeting logistics and remote instructions. Anyone's here joining remotely, we'd ask you to change your name to be your first and last name so we know who we're talking to. Anyone who speaks either online or here in person, we'd ask you to state your name and where you live. Keep your comments and questions to under 3 minutes. And if you're speaking about a specific agenda item, please keep your comments germane to the topic at hand. If you wish to speak, you must be called on by the mayor. You may make a statement or ask questions, but if you have multiple questions, please ask them all at one time. And if you speak out of turn, discuss non-germane topics, or go on too long, you will be reminded of the need to adhere to the expectations I've just mentioned. We have a couple of changes to the agenda. Item 18, homelessness request for resources, is not ready to go, so we'll be pulling that. And item 13, the budget workshop, I think we're going to move up earlier on the agenda, although Kelly, I'm not sure exactly.
I don't hear anything.
What spot we'll put that in.
Where is that?
I don't
We'll have
know,
that on
honey.
the agenda.
Honey, if you want to.
And we are now to, so with those changes, is the agenda acceptable to the members?
For clarification, with the budget discussion, did you want to move that up to the item number 5 just after the Arts Commission restatement?
I think that works.
Okay, great.
The hope is to get that done before our break at 8:30 while people are all still fresh and able to process, take in and process information. And so with those changes, are people satisfied with the agenda? Hearing no objection, we will move forward to general business and appearances. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to address the council on any topic that is not on tonight's agenda. You are limited to 5 minutes in your comments or questions, and I will take comments either from people in the room or people who are online. Anyone who wishes to proceed, must raise your hand, and either raise your hand physically or online, use your electronic hand so we can see you, and we'll get started. Anthony, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilors. My name is Anthony Irapino. I live at 4 Sabin Street, Montpelier. I'm here tonight to talk about the Development Review Board, but not to talk about the qualifications of your two applicants tonight, Mr. Jolly and Elvira Dana. I am, however, very glad to see that the Development Review Board is getting additional members because they're sorely needed. For those people that don't know at home, Development Review Board plays a critical role in the ability of our city to meet the housing challenge that is pressing and that is so often discussed at your meetings and is a central focus of the recently approved city plan. The Development Review Board plays a quasi-judicial role. It is where the rights of people to use their property to add housing and other structures to our city's tax rolls are decided. It's a very important process, and it is by statute and by the DRB's own adopted rules, subject to the rules of evidence. I have had the opportunity to watch a couple of the recent hearings of the DRB that are available on Orca Media's website. And as an attorney who works in the development field, I was very concerned by what I saw. I do want to make clear, I also do represent parties that are likely to be before the DRB. I'm here speaking on my own behalf. No one is paying me to be here tonight. I'm here out of my own concern. What concerned me is that I feel like the volunteers on the DRB who are doing an incredible community service by giving their time to doing this very hard job have not been given the training and the resources to implement their work in a way that is consistent with what the law requires and consistent with our goal of being a city that is sending a message to those that would help us with our housing crisis, that we are ready to be a fair place, that our process is going to be efficient, and that our process is going to be predictable and consistent with the regulations. What I saw on the tape was that the commission was allowing anyone to get up and basically say just about anything, even things that had nothing to do with the regulations or the permits that were in question. I understand that it's hard to not give people their chance to have their say when there's development happening in their neighborhood. But oftentimes what I heard was complaints about how the regulations apply to development in their neighborhood, and that's for the planning commission. That's not for the development review board. I know there's no attorneys currently on the DRB, and it's not a requirement that you should be an attorney. But the fact is that when you are asking volunteers to administer a process that affects the legal rights of people who are trying to add housing stock to our community, they need to understand the rules of evidence that they're supposed to apply, so that they're not considering things that are completely irrelevant. And the commissioners need to understand where to draw the line about comments that are being made. I think there must be resources from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, or if we have to spend the money to have an outside law firm like the firms that often represent the city, do some training for the members of our DRB, it would be money well spent. Because if the city DRB is making decisions that are not based on the regulation, then people who want to develop their properties are going to appeal those decisions. They're probably going to win, and it's going to cost the city a lot of extra money to defend those decisions. And if the developers do win, they've done so at great expense to themselves and great expense in time. And it's going to slow down development and reinforce the unfortunate perception that Montpelier is not a development friendly town. So this is not a criticism of any member of the DRB. This is not a criticism of the staff per se, but I do think it's gone on too long that this commission or this important board that has a very difficult job to do has not been given the training and resources to do its job well. And that is affecting our goals to have more housing in the city. So I would ask the city council and the city staff and management of the city to look into this. As we have new members coming onto the board, it's a great time to do some training to make sure that folks know what they're asked of, what they're signing up for, and that developers before the DRB are getting a fair shake. I appreciate your consideration of these views.
Thanks, Anthony. I appreciate those comments. Anybody else in the room? Steve?
Good evening, Steve Whitaker. I want to speak about Montpelier's broader housing and resilience needs because our choices in the next few months will shape the city for decades. Housing in Sabins Pasture. For more than 20 years, Sabins has been the obvious site for new housing, yet the city's attention keeps drifting to other less ready projects. Sabins owners are prepared to move forward with senior housing, clustered homes, even a new campus for Turtle Island if the city cooperates. Accelerating Sabins is the fastest path to real homes on the ground, even though I have more to say about Country Club Road, which is later on the agenda. The unhoused interim solutions. Meanwhile, our most vulnerable neighbors remain without safe shelter. Country Club Road property was used as brief winter shelter, then closed after 2 winters, one without a shower even. Before another winter arrives, we could have managed camping, hygiene trailers, workforce training happening there, far enough away from the Turtle Island leasehold over where the barns and the garages are. That's sufficient distance, and the priority would be getting water and sewer from the southeast corner of the clubhouse out to that bank of garages. These aren't abstract ideas. These are low-cost, practical steps that dozens of cities already use. The resilience depot. Montpelier also needs an upland resilience depot, a place to store emergency food, cots, partitions, communications gear, backup dispatch facilities. If downtown floods again, the Recovery and Resilience Commission recommended preparing upland sites. Country Club Road is an obvious location, but it needs planning now, not after the next disaster. funding readiness. There's more than 50 million available statewide in disaster recovery block grants. Some of that money can fund planning. Some can fund shovel-ready resilience and housing projects, but to compete successfully, Montpelier must demonstrate foresight, not piecemeal spending. That means a master plan, a realistic sequencing of projects, and credible partnerships with state and regional agencies. So I urge you to accelerate Savings Pasture, take immediate steps for the unhoused, plan for a resilience depot, pursue funding strategically. Let's not repeat past mistakes. Let's make Montpelier stronger, safer, and more equitable in the months ahead. And where this diverges from the path we're on most immediately is the idea of spending pursuing 5 to 7 million, which we likely won't get, to raise Route 2 and build that new highway, which is on the agenda, versus cooperating with Sabins at getting a multi-use path from Sabins up through the island that they are willing to accept versus a 24-foot road, and a multi-use path engineered to support an emergency use fire truck or ambulance getting through a second egress into Country Club Road. So that would serve the recreational needs of the public. It would provide a bicycle, electric bike, cart, stroller, and emergency egress for vehicles. And long-term, when there's housing up there, that same 12-foot engineered paved multi-use path could support an electric shuttle to town to keep people shopping downtown. So that should be our priority for planning, because it both accelerates a second safety egress for Country Club Road, it accelerates Savings Pasture development, and it promotes resiliency in diverse routed communications if we put dispatch up there in the next flood. So I've got more details on that, should you feel free to ask.
Thanks, Steve. Anybody else in the room? Online, I see Therese Majot. Welcome.
Hi, Jack. Thank you so much. I don't know how to lower my hand. Sorry. I'll figure it out later. I am coming to speak to the council this evening as the president of the Board of Trustees for the T.W. Wood Gallery. On October 3rd, we are celebrating our 130th anniversary. And we are the oldest art museum in Vermont, right here in Montpelier. And we were established in 1895 by Montpelier native Thomas Waterman Wood, who established it for the benefit of his fellow citizens. For 130 years, we have conserved 2 historic art collections. We exhibit and promote local artists, and we provide life-affirming arts education for Montpelierites and Central Vermonters of all ages. And I have sent in emails inviting all the members of the City Council to join us in our celebration on October 3rd at our gallery at 46 Berry Street. And I encourage all of you to come, as well as members of the community, to join us for 130 years of promoting and celebrating art and community. Thank you.
Thanks, Therese. Anybody else? All right. Seeing no other requests, either online or in person, we'll move to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? So moved. Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. The consent agenda is approved. Now we're moving to item 6, the Hillside Waverly Stairs.
So just to tee this up in your packet, there are a couple of options. We were notified that the stairs, contained in the packet here, were in disrepair, and really unsafe. And so we've taken a look at them and have come up with some options. Chris Lombro is going to run you through those options and take comment from them.
Great.
Good evening, Chris Lombro, Sustainability and Facilities Coordinator. But as Kelly said, that it came to our attention that the stairs there were in pretty bad condition. They were inspected by several staff members, public safety, public works. city manager's office and found to be in rough shape. Loose railings, boards that weren't attached at all, a lot of splitting, a lot of failed fasteners, kind of foundations that had shifted a little bit. So we closed them and quickly learned that these are really important artery to connect a couple neighborhoods with downtown. So knowing that, we try to escalate making repairs to this and getting them back in service and coming up with a good long-term solution. So in front of you, you have the three options that we looked at. Option one being temporary repair of the stairs. And given the condition of the stairs, we think that this is probably good for a year or so. And after that, we need additional work. Cost is about $6,000, and this could be, we shuffle money around and find a way, pay for it. We could get this done very quickly and put the stairs back in service, get us through the winter. Two other options would be budgeted for in FY27, and kind of a matter of choice as to which of these people want. I think a recommendation really is going to be that we make the temporary repairs and then deliberate a little more on the permanent solution. But outlined in front of you, we've done a little bit of homework, and they could cost about $55,000 to rebuild and replace the stairs as they exist. And that there's an assumption in there that isn't listed. I apologize. So that's assuming that the existing piers that support this thing can be reused. There would be additional cost, a few $100s a piece to replace a pier if it needs to be replaced on top of the 55 that's estimated right now. And what's listed as option 3 is to replace the wood frame stairs with a stair that's attached to and parallel to the retaining wall at the top. And that would have graded steel treads. So snow and ice could fall through, and it wouldn't require as much maintenance as happens now. The existing stairs, for in case anyone doesn't know, are solid surface wood. Really, every time I've checked our street foreman, every time it snows, we have people up there scraping things off by hand, shoveling them, salting them. The salt obviously rusts the steel fasteners that hold it all together, creates maintenance issues. So the graded treads are, in our opinion, an upgrade for that. From the base of the retaining wall down to the top of Hillside Avenue, Parks would use the Youth Conservation Corps labor to build granite steps on grade. Because they're on grade, they require railings. They do a little simpler that way. Railings could be added if they were determined necessary for safety, that type of thing. And the cost of that is estimated at about $40,000. And we think that would last longer with less maintenance than the existing configuration rebuilt with new materials. And I also did speak with Dan Perry, our street foreman, about maintenance concerns with that. And he thought that would lessen, it wouldn't alleviate, we'd still have to get up there and do hand work, but it would be slightly easier to maintain. So at this point, recommendation really is to, find $6,000 to repair these stairs as is. These things really kind of develop pretty quickly, and you'd like to have a little more time to do homework on it.
So you're not looking for a decision for the long-term replacement now. What you're basically looking for is approval to do the repair this fall, before winter comes on.
Exactly right. Yes.
Jim.
As the one who first looked at them, I'm ready to make a motion to, let's do the temporary repair of the existing stairs and railings and find the funds.
Any discussion? Yeah.
So this you would then thank you, before or during budget season, you would then come up with something. So because we're going to have to budget for this, right? So you'd have a plan with specs and so on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, great.
Council, anything else? All right,
I have one question. Just, thanks so much for like working hard to come up with a temporary solution that can connect, back to the neighborhood. I'm wondering how we can prevent this kind of thing from happening in the future in terms of like, it gets to a crisis point of failure on a piece of infrastructure like that. And, do we have a system through which we, review city assets like this in a way to, I mean, that didn't happen overnight, right? And just curious about like how we're making sure we're tracking these things.
We do have a capital needs assessment for buildings and key pieces of infrastructure, but to be honest, I don't believe these stairs ever appeared on that document, and it's but they've been repaired as reported by the neighborhood residents over the years. These have been in place since the 1980s, right? They've been around forever. And I guess when we rebuild with something new, then there's our opportunity to kind of put our money away every year and do some capital planning and be ready to take care of these things at the end.
thanks, Ben Huffman.
I would like to suggest that you, before you vote, you give an opportunity to others, myself and others who I believe have comments they'd like to make. For myself, I have lived in my home on Cliff Street prior to the construction of the current steps, which I believe were constructed in the late 70s. So that's been a pretty long run, 45 years. And I've used those stairs countless times. And as someone interested myself in construction and building, I've taken pretty close notice of the stairs over the years. And I think one of the basic failings of these has been the posts that were just referred to, the concrete piers that go down a certain distance, and the wood supports have attached to those. Those are, I don't know how many there are, but there've got to be, I would say, I don't know, 6 or so. And they, of course, are all independent of one another structurally. And over the years, what's happened is that the earth surrounding those posts has shifted in diverse ways. And the effect of that has been to cause a twisting of the stairs and accelerating boards coming loose, etc. So I think the first thing I would like to note is, even though you're not going to vote tonight on a particular solution, since the city parties involved are promoting what's called option 3, I just want to draw attention to the fact that really that is probably the poorest approach, in my opinion. One being that the old curb pieces that are to be used for the steps, they will have the same shifting in an inconsistent manner. And I think that's inviting more trouble. The second point that is really primary, in my opinion, is that any stairs, to be safely used and not cause trouble, they need to be uniform in every respect of the treads and risers. And particularly if you're changing an entirely different material and structural form, it's just going to introduce greater risk for people tripping or not realizing that they're not walking in the same manner that they had been. So in my opinion, there really needs to be some more careful attention applied to designing something that is a much better permanent fix.
Thanks, Ben. That is your time, but thanks. I think those are all points well taken.
I do have one other short point, if I may.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Barry, if you can make it very quickly.
I've done some investigation into possibilities, and one that I've looked into is a steel setup, which would be the same as you might find in any commercial or industrial setting. And steel is a much better material than wood for something like this. And it could be done according to my guesstimate on dimensions for somewhere between $12,000 and $15,000. Now, in addition to that would be the labor of putting it together and the cement work to create proper footings.
Great. I think I'll cut you there, Ben, and thank you for that. I hope you're in contact as we develop the long-range plan. Anybody else? Steve?
I really appreciated Ben's comment, because what I find is I go around and take photos of all these problems, that failing infrastructure. The problem I see now is that we're putting in new mistakes. So for every project we embark upon, we create 2 more projects that are never postponed, indefinitely postponed and never budgeted. So if we're going to capital budget repairs of these things, the maintenance staff, and the budgeting has to get down to the level of, we just put in a new sidewalk, but left the curb 1.5 inches higher than the sidewalk right at School Street. So anybody walking School Street and crossing trips over that 1.5 inch high granite curb. We just paved in front of Bear Pond Books. There's 2 inches of standing water, and people are walking diagonally to get on where they don't have to walk through 2 inches of water. These are brand new paving jobs that should be under warranty. And what we don't have is the oversight to make sure we get our money's worth and get it done right the first time, instead of creating 2 more projects out of every one we attempt. So there's a real dysfunction in the way we are conducting our infrastructure maintenance, and it's costing us dearly. So
Thank you. Folks, are we ready to vote? All those in favor of the motion to do the immediate repair this fall and work on plans for the future, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, great, thank you. Next up, we have item 7, pub follow-up. Kelly, I assume that's you or Ben?
Yes, so we actually do have members from the hub if they'd like to come up. And so just to take this up, so in your packet, we do have 2 of the 3 lease documents back in front of you. Just a reminder from last time, what we put back to the hub in terms of agreement would be that for the phase 1 lease agreement, which would be the building itself, there would be the same terms as what Trill Island has, but with sort of the potential for a 5-year extension with, sort of renewal language that would be automatic. So that was added in generally, and I can speak to this, they're in agreement with that adjustment. The second piece was for a ground lease. And so it was an option for 1.5 acres. We proposed back to them a 3-year term with financing. They have countered back with 5 years plus an additional 2. So that's where we stand right now. There was a third document that was not included in this, and that was the terms of that ground lease. And so here within the packet, we do have the details that there was an offer on the table for a 30-year ground lease with the option to renew based on mutual agreement. And so we don't have that for you tonight. There are still some items to discuss around the surety bond. But with that, I might just turn it over to the hub if they've got a few comments they'd like to make. There was also 2 memos that were included in your packet from the hub. And I'll take it from there.
All right, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor.
We don't have a presentation to make tonight.
I'll just start by asking you to introduce yourselves.
I'm sorry, Nat Winthrop, Chair of the Hub Board. There are a couple of things we're looking for tonight before we can present our newest revised draft of the land lease. The first and the most important one is that we get some sort of indication from you, the council, as to whether you are open to a compromise, as Kelly described it, on the term of the option agreement. 4 weeks ago, you came back and suggested we only needed 3 years to put together financing for what we hope will be our $4 million sports barn. We contend that that is just in an inadequate time frame for us to put together the package, which includes private fundraising, loans from banks, and probably also the Vermont Community Loan Fund, and perhaps VITA. And then the third leg of our stool would be some sort of federal grant. And we are virtually certain that we will not be able to get a federal grant within 3 years. So we're asking for a minimum of 5 years for the option agreement to enter into the lease. If we can't put together the financing package, then we would not exercise the option. And the land would be once again available for the city to do with it as you will. We're pretty confident that nothing else is likely to happen on that 1.5 acres over the next 5 years, unless it's to create another soccer field or another outdoor playing field. So we don't think, to answer your concern, Ben, about the opportunity cost. I forget exactly what you called it. We don't think there's a significant cost to the city in terms of opportunity loss. In fact, we think that this opportunity, which we first brought to the city 4 years ago, is one that the city hopefully will embrace, that we will provide primarily indoor recreation. And the other thing we made clear in our memo to you that is part of your packet is that unless we can get, unless we can agree on a compromise, namely a minimum of 5 years for the option, the hub is not interested in pursuing the building lease, which is for virtual sports or simulated sports, which again, we think will create a lot of public interest and activity if we are able to go forward. I'm talking about especially the next 5 years before we would be, I mean, it could be a shorter term than that when we would exercise the option. And Ben, I know you voiced the opinion that we could probably put together the financing package in 3 years. yes, that's possible. But the board has met about this and discussed it at length. And we think it's quite unlikely. So if you stick to the 3-year condition that was embedded in your motion 3 years ago, we think 4 weeks ago, sorry, that would be the end of this whole 4-year-long process. And we'd very reluctantly have to walk away and look for another site, but basically start from scratch. So we implore you to, at the very least, consider that one compromise out of the 3 or 4 conditions that you presented, or Kelly presented the 4th one, which she paraphrased a few minutes ago about the building lease, and either party having the option to back out of that agreement, which we are fine with. So there were 4 suggested amendments or conditions that have been presented, and we are confident that we can reach agreement on the 4th, which has to do with minimizing the city's risk by virtue of a surety bond or some comparable mechanism. Well, we can address that if you have questions about why we didn't present that. We didn't present an amended ground lease or land lease in advance of this meeting. Basically, it's because there's a lot of confusion on our side, including our real estate lawyer is very confused in terms of exactly what that would look like.
Okay, thanks. Let me see if there's any questions from members of the council. Because we could just, this would be an appropriate thing to go into executive session if no one has any questions, entertain a motion to go into executive. Well, I'm going to see if there's anything from the members of the council. Okay, Steve, I'll take a comment.
I want to speak tonight about the proposed hub lease at Country Club. I'm not opposed to recreational uses up there, but I urge you to slow down and make sure the lease aligns with the city's larger obligations for this site. You have obligations to the public that are not well articulated and not well designed for. The lease should not pre-commit the city to site conditions that block the emerging priorities of a resilience depot, a multi-use emergency path, future utility extensions. A master plan coordination clause should be added to the lease, making clear that the city can relocate or reconfigure leased areas if the Country Club Road plan demands it. The second, the city must retain a clear termination for convenience right with at least 90 days notice. Without that, we risk being locked into a contract that limits our ability to adapt to flood resilience projects or to provide housing. Third, the lease provides below market access. That's acceptable only if the hub delivers measurable community benefits. Youth scholarships, open gym hours, low income access, and reports back quarterly. Otherwise, Montpelier taxpayers are subsidizing a private operation without accountability. Fourth, traffic and safety cannot be ignored. Turtle Island Daycare already generates peak drop-offs. The hub adds simultaneous waves of parents. We need firm parking, lighting, and noise management requirements in the lease, along with winter operations plan for snow and ice. Finally, the city must be fully protected on liability. Hub should carry commercial general liability coverage and name the city as an additional insured and indemnify the city broadly. In short, the lease is premature unless these conditions are added. Without them, we risk spending public resources in a way that undercuts both our resilience goals and our long-term housing strategy. I urge you to approve the lease only subject to safeguards. And the first thing that comes to mind is we could be devaluing every lot that we propose to sell to first-time homeowners by having to suffer pickleball noise incessantly. You know, I don't think we've calculated in the benefit to the sports club of the housing contingent or the negative impact on the saleability and livability of those units. This is where a master plan is essential, and so far we've met nothing but resistance to that.
Thank you. Council members, anything? And does anyone want to make a motion to go into executive session? Or what's your pleasure? Okay, and that would be a motion to go into executive session pursuant to 1 VSA section 313A2 regarding the negotiation of lease purchase or real estate, lease option or real estate purchase. Did someone, Harry, did you second it or did someone second that?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, let's just go ahead and start. Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Are they coming back?
All right, does anyone have a motion?
So we gotta get the link.
All right, Chair would entertain a motion.
Okay, I would like to make a motion that the council reaffirms our original proposal for what was made last time for the 3-year agreement and the surety bond.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
We just adopted a motion that says that the council reaffirms the decision we made at our previous meeting.
So that's a number of the 5 years.
Yes.
Yes, we're done. I'm so sorry. It's extremely disappointing.
Next up, we have item 8, Good Samaritan Haven. Welcome. Good to see you.
Evening, everybody. I'm Julie Bond, Executive Director of Good Samaritan Haven.
Meredith Warner, Deputy Director of Good Samaritan Haven. Thanks for having us.
Here to update you, give you an overview of the turret house shelter in Montpelier, which is the new year-round emergency shelter in Montpelier that Good Samaritan Haven will operate, and try to outline next steps over the next several months for you, for your awareness. So just a bit of background, as we've in Central Vermont served nearly 40 years now, operating 3 shelters over these years: Barry City, Barry Town, Berlin, and in Montpelier over these last several years have operated a winter overflow. And that has most recently been at the Elks property. So last year, with combined support from the city of Montpelier and state partners, we were also able to operate a day warming space in collaboration with volunteers and the community table. And we also have community outreach and street outreach teams, which you know, we have 2 staff who focus on the bulk of their time in Montpelier in particular. And that program, that team has been possible due to a lot of support by the city over time. So while the funding source is no longer available, now we're really deeply grateful for the Montpelier Community Foundation, who continues to support that outreach work. The need for the safe and year-round emergency shelter remains really high in Montpelier and this whole region. And the turret house expands Good Sam's year-round capacity. So we hope that that will be a really meaningful impact for the unsheltered in the coming months and years. So just a bit of several key facts, which I think we've shared, but just for the community to be aware of. The turret house will be located on Berry Street, just up the road from here. It will serve adults age 18 and above, 80 plus, who can live independently. We'll operate the site 24/7, 365 days a year. We'll provide case management, housing navigation, benefit support, recovery support, overall wellness, in addition to our emergency housing provision. So the goal is always to help our guests to get into permanent housing to the next step in their own personal goals. The timeline is that this past week, we officially closed on the property. So we've purchased the property, and so that is a big point of celebration, a big phase one of our process. The renovations for the property will begin in October. And we anticipate, as soon as we possibly can, to occupy the building formally. Likely that is early 2026. So we'll keep folks posted as we know the timeline officially for the scope of that work that we'll be doing. So the next steps that we will be engaging in over these next couple of months are beginning some direct outreach in the community, connecting with our neighbors, listening to folks, hearing what is of interest to them, curiosities, concerns, questions that we can answer. We'll have some open houses at the site so folks can see what it looks like and what it will be aspiring to look like soon. Some office hours, some drop-in visits and things like that we'll make available. The shelter, once it's open, will be staffed 24/7 every day of the year. We'll have, you know, our typical safety plans and processes and policies and procedures that work with our, you know, within our program here as well as everywhere else in the region. We'll continue all of our ongoing coordination with city staff, public safety, local service partners, and so on. And just work to integrate into, you know, a year-round fashion that we haven't had that opportunity to do in the past. So we're really excited about that. So we'll keep you all informed as things go along. Just really wanted to give you the latest on that and to celebrate that, to raise that up as a, you know, investment in the community, as a way to really build in more stabilization for our most vulnerable neighbors. So looking forward to that. So thank you. If there are any questions, please don't hesitate.
Yeah, Jim.
Are you still looking at maybe a January 1st startup?
It depends how quickly we can get our construction to occur. My sense is that it will be beyond January 1st. Yeah, at this point.
Well, thank you for being honest and welcome to the city.
Anybody else? So.
Congratulations. I know you've been trying to do this for a long time. It's great to have a year-round shelter so close. How, if at all, does the operation of this facility differ from your other facilities? Is there anything that's unique about the way this will operate?
It doesn't differ necessarily. It's a pretty typical semi-congregate shelter. It mirrors quite closely our flagship shelter in Berry City. which is a very similar footprint and process of how we serve the community there. So the 18 beds are also bunked beds in bedrooms on the second floor, the same as our other shelter is. So that model is something that we're very familiar with and that we run as has been going strong for almost 40 years. So that's pretty much what it would look like. Yeah. Okay.
Anybody else?
I just want to say thank you so much for it's really important work and we're really glad to have you as a neighbor. I also was just wondering if you could talk about who are the state partners that are supporting this?
Yeah, sure. So we have the Office of Economic Opportunity, which is our key funder for shelter operations in the state of Vermont. The state has shelter capacity funds that have been allocated over the last couple of years. And so this money is part of that set of funds, most of the money. That is one of our main funding sources for this, as well as some very generous family foundations and individual donors making it possible, with collaboration, underwriting coordination, as well as project partnership with Vermont Housing Conservation Board and Evernorth. And we've got an incredible local team of partners that are working on this as well.
Great. It's great to hear. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. This is great news. I'm looking forward to the day that you are able to open up. It's been many years that this has been something missing in Montpelier, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks a lot, everybody.
Steve.
Steve Whitaker, Montpelier. I think that what we're seeing is a failure of our own planning. Our homelessness task force, congregate shelters are so yesterday, and to the mental health crisis we see among many of the unhoused has directly to do with the lack of privacy. And we're still in the fringes of a pandemic. A congregate shelter should have been out of the question. And yet we had no plan to even guide the pursuit of this property or the pursuit of a shelter here. But the staffing, the intrusion, you could say Good Samaritan looks out for the homeless like the Israelis look out for the Gazans. We do not have a dignified system at all to care for the unhoused. This is an oppressive, invasive business model. And Rick DeAngelis as much as admitted that, very paternalistic, very patronizing, very dominating these folks' lives. That is not a ladder up. That is not giving people the dignity and the privacy they need to put their own headspace together and their own next goals and steps. So I think we can and should do far better. And to be calling this a big step when it's only 18 beds, when we've got 100 people out on the street right now, is really folly. It's a tragedy of the highest order that we can't even ask the folks that we're giving substantial money to come up with a plan for how we should care for the folks that won't fit into this shelter. So I don't have all the answers. I've made suggestions. I think we're going to have to resort to soft shelter managed camping in order to accommodate this emergency, but we're not even seem to be making any steps towards that. So I just think we're patting ourselves on the back here with a very false and negligent framework as we go into winter. I mean, to have a shelter that's not going to open till January, if then, while these people are out on the street, it's an emergency that y'all should be putting, higher than a rickety stairway,
All right. Thanks for coming in. Next, we're to item 9, reinstatement of the Public Arts Commission.
So back in June, we reviewed our existing fee structure. And the Public Arts Commission was put on hold at that time. We have currently been evaluating the Public Arts Commission, kind of trying to determine, what the funding structure will look like, what some of the projects might look like. And actually this week, we had a meeting regarding the 1216 State Street lot, Main Street lot. And also Confluence Park, we were talking about some public art installations. And we really came to realize that, we should have the Public Arts Commission. So this item is before you tonight to reinstate the Public Arts Commission and to have them continue with their work along with their 7 members. And so we would, if reconstituted, go ahead and keep the existing members, and then anyone who's up for renewal, or if we need to do some recruitment, we would go ahead and launch that effort. But really what we're looking for also, in addition to getting the Arts Commission back up and running officially, is to develop recommendations for a temporary public art installation at 1216 Main Street, just to really beautify that lot, especially as we're working on development. And then also to consider the feasibility of an installation at Confluence Park as well. So to really kind of take these spaces and locations and start to try to beautify them and do something good with them. So I hope that you'll take that under consideration and would take a motion or 2.
Thanks, Kelly. The question I have is one of the reasons that we've been pausing or eliminating some of these commissions is because of staff capacity. And so could you comment on that?
Yes. So I think with the Arts Commission, we actually do have, we are limited, but I will say that the person that would staff this committee is now on board. And so we would be able to do that.
Great. Jim.
That was gonna be my question.
Okay. Anyone else? Is there a motion to approve the request?
So moved.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks. All right. Next up, we're right on time. Sarah, come on up. Budget workshop.
So while Sarah's getting started here, she has a pretty comprehensive presentation for you tonight. And so what we're going to be reviewing is sort of the anatomy of the budget. So going over FY26, giving you some of the details for FY27, and then seeking some feedback from you in terms of, what you might like to see in budget development. So, I mean, it's no secret that we are limited in terms of the funding that we have. But I do think that we have an opportunity here to take a look at, what we're doing, how we're doing it, and to kind of focus on the things that we want to invest in. And so we have just approved a new strategic plan, which includes housing, infrastructure, and economic development. And so I do anticipate that those items will be front and center in this budget process. But as we sort of get into this, we want to make sure that we're able to provide as much information as possible, but in a way that is accessible and that provides context for future decisions. So we're excited to share this with you. We're hoping that it'll be a good start to some really valuable discussions. And then following this item, we will have 3 workshops that will focus on areas of the budget. And so we can go over that a little bit in depth a little bit later. So as you're going through this, please be thinking about what you'd like to see. We'd like to kind of start there and maybe frame this in a way of what's possible. So Sarah's getting her presentation here. It's a great presentation. I also want to say that there are items in this presentation that you'll be able to use as tools throughout the process. We did dust these off to make sure that you had them in advance. While I do want to kind of take a positive look at the budget. I also do want to note that, we do have our work cut out for us this year. It's no different than any other year. So I know that it's going to be tough, but I also am really excited about what's next and what we can do. So with that, I'm going to have Sarah take it away. And maybe we could dim the lights too, so we get the full effect.
Hi, I'm Sarah LaCroix, the Finance Director. I'm sorry we had to turn the lights off. This is a 32-slide presentation and finance is not the most riveting topic, so please bear with me. There are no fun pictures and graphics, so I'm sorry. But I do think this is really important, as we head into the budget season, just to go back through what's in 26, what goes into a budget in general for municipal budgeting, and take a quick preview at 27 and give you guys some things to think about and chew on and come back with questions that will help us move through and make this a very successful budget season. So with that, and I just mentioned, we'll do municipal budgeting 101. We'll go through the FY26 budget, high level, what's in there, and then take you through 27 and ask for some guidance. So here, municipal budgeting at its core. Governments make program and service decisions that allocate scarce resources to programs and services through the budget process. As a result, the budget process is one of the most important activities undertaken by governments. The budget process consists of activities that encompass the development, implementation, and evaluation of a plan for the provision of services and capital assets. The mission of a budget process is to help decision makers make informed choices about the provisions of services and capital assets and to promote stakeholder participation in that process. And so I want to take you through a few things about municipal budgeting because it is a very complicated process and there's a lot that goes into it. First, the purpose of the municipal budget is to serve as the city's financial plan for the year. It aligns resources with community priorities and provides accountability and transparency to the taxpayers. Some of the key principles that go into municipal budgeting are a balanced budget, transparency, accountability, long-term perspective, and linkage to organizational goals like our strategic plan. It's important to have a balanced budget so that your revenues meet or exceed expenditures. If it's unbalanced, then your goal would be to build a surplus so that you can grow fund balance. There's also the opportunity to balance it, or to operate at a deficit, which would be to use prior fund balance, which I would never ever recommend. So just to be clear, I just figured I should call that out. But that could reduce the tax rate if you utilized fund balance, which again, I don't recommend. And so as we move ahead, our budget process includes planning and forecasting. We assess revenues, expenditures, and long-term needs. We then make requests of departments. The departments will submit their proposed budgets that include, current operating needs, along with futuristic and innovative ways that we can move the city forward at a cost that's reasonable. Then I will compile and balance a draft budget. And what that looks like is it'll be different this year because we don't have the ClearGov platform, so it'll be more manual than it has been. But departments will get a copy of their budget with the last 5 years worth of data to review. And so they'll make submissions and I will put together the budget and then balance the needs of what they have with what that could look like for an increased tax revenue and kind of see where we land. We also will review and deliberate. We'll have several council work sessions. The city manager, myself, and department heads will all meet and review proposed budgets and talk about the highest needs, and then there will be public hearings. The next thing that will happen is that you will adopt a budget. That'll be in January. It has to be 40 days in advance of town meeting, so no later than January 22nd, we will need to adopt this budget. And then there will be implementation and monitoring, which is after the budget season is all over and we get into the new fiscal year. Revenues and expenditures will be tracked against the budget, and you guys will receive monthly reports with quarterly detailed memos. So there are three main budget types that we work through. The operating budget, which is your day-to-day services. That's going to be the general fund where you see fire, police, public works, and administration. You also have operating budgets in water, sewer, parking, and the district heat funds. In those funds, you'll also see capital budgeting because they're a different type of fund, which I'll talk about in a minute. We also have a capital budget that looks at long-term investments in infrastructure, equipment, and facilities. Our capital fund is funded through a general fund appropriation and is reviewed by the capital committee. We also have special revenue funds, which have restricted sources or are set aside, like our parks, recreation, senior center, and cemetery funds that are specifically allocated that way. We have several other funds, but they're not funds that are budgeted for, that are also special revenue funds, such as grants funds and FEMA funds. So next I want to talk about revenue and then expenses. There's been a lot of talk about the source of revenue and finding additional revenue. That's a tough proposition in a municipality because we really are extremely limited in our avenues at which we can gain additional revenue. And so our largest revenue source is obviously property taxes. That is the main source of revenue for any municipality. We also receive state and federal aid through grants, pilot money, payment in lieu of taxes, and highway state aid. We also are able to collect the 1% local options tax, which is a huge benefit to the city. We already are collecting meals and rooms, and we just started collecting sales. So I'm optimistic that that will bring a boost to our revenue. In addition, we'll have charges for services. Those are mostly in the enterprise funds because they're built on fees. Some of those are in recreation, the senior center as well, through program and membership fees. And then there's other revenue. The main sources of other revenue are licenses, permits, investment earnings, and donations. And how I budget for those, or we budget for those, is based on historical trends, known rates based on what we need to raise in a property tax levy or in a water and sewer fee. We also factor in economic and demographic changes and only budget for one-time or restricted funds if we know they're going to be received and if they're going to be received in that fiscal. So next is the expenses. We have a lot of expenditure types in our municipal budget, but in its core, it is personnel costs, operating costs, debt service, and capital outlay. This is a similar approach as to revenue. We look at current service levels based on prior year expenditures and then grow from there based on inflation and need. We'll adjust for known changes such as contract increases or wages and benefit increases, new debt service coming online, or changing payments and utility costs. We also have planned equipment replacement for infrastructure projects and new programs or reductions approved by the council. So those are different aspects of estimating expenses and how we start to build this budget. And so finally, it is part of the municipal budget. There are two different main fund types. There is a third, fiduciary, but not relevant for this conversation. So that's governmental funds and proprietary funds. And the main difference in those, which is really important, is that the governmental funds is primarily supported by taxes and intergovernmental revenue. It focuses on current financial resources, and the funds we budget for those are the general fund, the parks fund, the recreation fund, senior center fund, and cemetery fund. Then you have the proprietary or enterprise funds. Those are like business type activities where you charge fees to recover costs, and they are set up structurally different, and they come from user fee bases. And for those, we have the water fund, the sewer fund, the parking fund, and the district heat fund. So now I'm going to take you through what's in the FY26 budget at a high level so we can refamiliarize ourselves with what we went through last year and what that means. And so again, governmental funds, these are tax and intergovernmentally funded primarily. And so you can see in the general fund budget, I have taken our FY26 budget and condensed it down into a high level review of revenue. So you can see our property taxes that are for the general fund. I separated out the taxes that were related to the library, other agencies, which is the community fund and CVHHH, and Montpelier Alive. You'll also see different categories for penalties and interests, the payment in lieu of taxes. We have some transfer for administrative and equipment costs that come from the other funds and into the general fund. We have intergovernmental revenue, which, like I said, is grants, the highway state aid, capital fire mutual aid, ambulance revenues, and local options tax. And so you can see the 65% of our budget is the general fund property tax revenue as far as sources of revenue. And then if you want to take a look at expenses, I have broken our expenses down by department category. And so you'll see here the different amounts budgeted for each department and what that looks like as a percentage of that total general fund budget. Here you can see Like you would expect that police operations, fire and EMS, and Department of Public Works hold the highest percentages within our expense categories. And I will post this presentation online and email it to all of you later this week or early next. So just that way it's available as a tool. And so here I've continued this. You'll see back on this other slide, there is transfers to other funds, this big number here, the 2.264. And so this breaks that out a bit more. Within that, there are transfers to the senior center, parks, cemetery, and the rec department, which are all tracked in a separate fund, but approved as part of the general fund overall. We also transfer funds out to a separate capital fund where we track the capital expenses separately. And then we have debt service, which is for the capital related infrastructure and equipment that has been purchased in the past. Here, the capital fund budget, as I mentioned, we raise the funds to the general fund and transfer them out to a separate fund. Just a quick recap for 26, the need was really high and we were not able to fund the whole need, but we did set a goal that was to do a 2-cent increase method, which was one that was used previously, discontinued due to financial constraint, but it was really successful back when that was started in FY14 at bolstering the capital fund budget, which allowed us to do more paving and improvement to infrastructure. And so this is what, we did a $220,000 increase last year, which was slightly less than the 2 cents, but it was still incredibly helpful in growing that capital fund budget. These 27 and 28 numbers are old. I'm still working to revisit and revise those. So you will get those in future capital meetings and future budget discussions. And then just a brief capital fund components. There's debt service, infrastructure and equipment. We had paving, sidewalks, stormwater, hybrid police cruisers, DPW trucks, sidewalk plows, technology upgrades, all that made that last year's capital budget. And just a plug, we're having the capital committee meeting on October 1st. So, it'll be a good time. So next I'll take you through some very high level of the Parks Fund, Rec, Senior Center, and Cemetery. You'll see here, I was trying to illustrate the breakout of what, what portion of their revenues are property taxes versus other funds. Obviously in the Parks Fund, there's not a lot of avenues to generate revenue aside from property taxes. So they'll be the heaviest weighted in general fund property taxes. But as you move to the rec fund, they're about 65-34, which is great. And so we just need to continue to find ways to bolster program revenues. That way, there's less burden on the taxpayers. And that same holds true for the senior center fund. As you can see, their property tax appropriation is only 18% of their budgeted revenues. So that, their big fees are program membership, meal fees. Here with the cemetery budget, they're about 63% funded by property taxes. The rest is investment income and fees for lot sales and burials. So with that, that's the wrap of the governmental funds. And that takes us into the enterprise proprietary funds, which is really more like operating a business, and the rules are quite a bit different. So we really just are charging fees to recover costs, and they're not funded by property taxes. So here, we'll do the water fund first, and I just want to be transparent. These are very brief, but we will be back in a future workshop with one that's dedicated to the parking fund and the district heat fund, and then a separate one that is dedicated to the water fund and the sewer fund, so that we can take a deep dive and really look at what goes into these budgets and make some tough policy decisions about how we move ahead, how we fund infrastructure, and what those funds look like as we move into the future. Oh, sorry, skip right over. So here you can see it's primarily charges for services based on what we need to cover in that year to cover debt, administration, meters, the distribution system, supply and treatment, as well as capital infrastructure upgrades, which we'll get into more in depth in a future workshop. The same rings true for the sewer fund. This is primarily funded by charges for service based on the of that system. And so you have the some stormwater management in here, which we will in the future have to create a separate enterprise fund for stormwater. We just are not there with capacity at this current moment. And so that is also up for future discussion. But you'll see there's administration and treatment, and there's debt service mixed in based on related. Parking fund is also all charges for services. The parking fund is struggling a bit because we've just not had the parking we once did. And so we really need to reevaluate what that fund is and what its future looks like. But here you can see we budgeted for charges for services for meters and permits and then for tickets. And then that budget is made up of a small portion of DPW's parking maintenance and then primarily parking enforcement. Next is the district heat fund, which you just approved rates for back in July or August, I think. And so this fund is made up of charges for services for both capacity and for energy. And then you'll see similar categories to water and sewer related to operation, administration, debt reserve, and state contract costs. So that wraps up the enterprise funds. So just to take a look at FY26 overall, we know that budget season was incredibly difficult and many hard decisions were made. We had reductions in force and reductions in service levels. We are almost 2 months into FY26, and I am monitoring that budget versus actual very closely. We are experiencing higher inflationary pressures than we're budgeted for. I do want to say that we are collaborative and creative among departments, which is how we're able to curb some spending and find solutions that may be more cost effective than we had in the past, given our limited resources. You know, the perfect example is the Cliff Street stairs that Chris was just talking about. You know, we really, DPW facilities and parks really worked hard to come up with a good solution for that. And I think it's showing growth as a city, and that's really important. Also, our cash flow is incredibly tight right now, given the high capital outlay, the flood recovery costs, and low reserves, which is also being monitored closely. There were some very promising things, though, in 26. We got the 1% local option sales tax approved, and that was approved with a 74% approval rating. The first payment for that should come in November for the first 3 months of the year. So I am anxiously awaiting to see what that will look like so we can start to incorporate that into the budget season and get that into the 27 budget, as well as come back to you with what we should do with what we've gotten this year that's not currently budgeted. In addition, the fire truck bond passed with a 72% approval rating. And then for me, the most exciting thing is that the city budget passed, and that had an extremely high approval rating of 83%. So that's, you know, very promising for what ratepayers feel about the city budget. So then this is available online, really hard to see right here, but this is the tax rate comparison from 25 to 26. The biggest takeaway is in that bottom right corner that's really hard to see, where it says that the overall homestead tax rate between municipal and school for 26 went up 0.5%. And so, you know, that was a really difficult task to me, I think, between municipal and the school. And so I think that really helped ratepayers this year. So now we're on to FY27. This fiscal year runs from July 1, 26 to June 30, 27. And this is a timeline. So what we'll see in the upcoming months. In September, right now we've got this budget workshop. I am gathering preliminary data based on trends, rate increases, you know, unfunded needs, and working on capital fund planning. In October, we'll do additional budget workshops. I'll begin to build the 27 budget, rolling 26 as a base, and then using known factors and increases to get that to a place where it's ready for department head review and their own adjustments. We're hoping to gain insight into your priorities. We'll have capital committee meetings, and then provide, I'm hoping in the next meeting or the meeting after, to provide a preliminary financial report. It will be prior to the 25 audit completion, but they are here this week. So I expect that after this week, and I don't expect that there will be any adjustments. I just would rather have a fresh set of eyes look at it before I come back to you with how we look. Once November gets here, again, we'll be doing more budget workshops. Departments will have to submit their budget requests to me. I will compile the full budget, and then I will meet with Kelly, the department heads, and we will bring that budget into alignment with the goals and targets we've heard from you through these budget workshops. In December, you'll get the city manager's budget presentation. There'll be additional workshops, and I'll incorporate any adjustments and requests you've made into that budget. Once we get to January, hopefully we're just in the first and second public hearings portions, but there is opportunity for additional workshops if needed. We'll finalize the budget, approve the warning, do bond hearings, which may be applicable for 27. You'll also get an audit report presentation for 25 and a general fund balance update about where we sit compared to our policy and historically. And then February, no budget meetings. And March, you'll have the town meeting day vote. And then 30 days after that, in April, if no one appeals, the budget will be locked for 27. There are some pressures on the budget right now as we go into this build. The COLA for 2026 will come out in October. That's not yet known, but based on what I've read, that is expected to be somewhere between 2.5% and 3% is what it's looking like. Our consumer price index for August was 2.9%. And for the Northeast region was 3.3%. And we are experiencing, costs that are higher than that inflation rate in this area. Our health insurance came back with a 21.2% increase for the first 6 months if we stay with our current plan, with likely an additional 10% minimum that we'll tack on for the second 6 months of that fiscal year. We are currently working hard with the broker on options to reduce that percentage increase. Our hope is to bring that in closer to 10%, which is a reasonable increase given what's going on with health insurance currently. We also have aging infrastructure and pent up capital demand, continued flood recovery, and reduced fund balance. Our policy threshold for fund balance is 15% of general fund budgeted expenditures. We are at June 30, 2024, we were only at about 6% of this. And so that adds to some of the cash flow uncertainty, not having the built up reserves. The 15% is a good model policy. It's a tough policy to reach, but in my opinion, to have in reserves, you really should have 2 months worth of cash flow in reserves, and 15% is not quite enough for that. 6% is definitely not enough for that. So then FY26, 7 budget strategic plan initiatives. We have housing, economic development, and infrastructure as the plan initiatives. As you can see, in the past 2 fiscal years, there was no funding in the budget for housing or economic development. Previously, there was around $310,000 in that budget related to those topics. So that is an additional pressure that will be on the budget to try to fit in costs related to the strategic plan and your initiatives. In addition, your other initiative is infrastructure. And so, our goal is to hit steady state values, but obviously that can't happen in 1 year. And so we need to decide how much and how fast we want to grow the capital fund and what the rates can support. So this will go online. This is a rough version of the budget calculator that you guys have seen before. What we've done here is taken the FY26 budget. I've updated the grand list value to be reflective of how we just set the tax rate. And the way this tool works is really neat because you can put in additions or reductions to that budget and see what the tax rate impact would be. And then you can adjust based on your home value to see what that would drive your tax bill to either up or down, depending on how you wanted to adjust. So for example, with a 22% increase in health insurance, you would slot, $410,000 into this options cost here and see how that played out. So I think this will be helpful as we work through budget development and allow you guys to play and the public to play to see, how that looks and how important different initiatives are to them based on their cost. And so based on the grand list, when we set the tax rate, 1 cent is $131,934. So that's important to consider. And then this I'll get posted on the website next week once I've fully vetted and make sure there's no bugs or kinks in it. So then only 2 more slides. This one and one more, I promise. We are looking for guidance from you on the 27 budget development. Things really to consider are service levels, expectations for maintaining, enhancing, or adjusting service levels and delivery, programs and initiatives, identifying priority programs to sustain, expand, or phase out. Strategic plan alignment, as we've just talked about. We want to ensure budget decisions support your adopted priorities. And then there are fiscal pressures. And just to acknowledge the environment shaping 27, there are difficulties operating within the 26 budget. We have rising personnel costs, debt service, utility, and maintenance costs. We have a limited tax base and limited external revenue sources, though the sales tax will help with that. It isn't enough to put the kind of dent, we're looking for in revenue growth. We also have increasing community demands for municipal services, and the fund balance requires growth to meet policy and aid and cash flow stability. So this really is our jump start into the 27 budget season, and we hope getting in front of you early, we'll be able to have impactful discussions and get guidance so that we can build a budget that meets your expectations, community expectations, a strategic plan, and is also fiscally responsible. And with that, my final slide is really council considerations and questions to ponder. I don't necessarily think you'll have questions for me tonight, and that's okay. But, we brainstormed a few questions, things to consider as we work through this process, like should the city consider increasing the payment budget in 27? Would council like staff to conduct a cost benefit analysis comparing continued use of overtime versus adding staff, including identifying a point at which one option becomes more financially sustainable? What level of investment would you envision in supporting housing development and to make it easier to build? Should staff revisit fee structures as a potential mechanism to generate additional revenue? What target level of reserves does the council consider appropriate for a rainy day fund? And how much investment should the city prioritize in resiliency initiatives? And so those are just a handful of off the top questions that come to me when I start thinking about budgeting. And so I imagine you guys will have many as we work through this process. And I just want to make sure we keep the questions and the guidance at the forefront as we build a budget and work together to get one that's good to go in front of voters. And with that, we should turn the lights on so people don't fall asleep.
Thanks, Sarah.
Sir, that's not sleepy. Like, that's an excellent presentation.
This is a lot, yeah.
More like nightmare.
Don't worry.
So folks, this is a lot to take in. I'll understand if people don't have questions for Sarah right now, but the floor is open if you do. Jim.
Do you have a figure on what we're in deficit? Yeah.
So I don't want to give a number because we're still working through the audit, but I do want to say that everything broke in our favor. We were able to do a really good job pushing for delinquency collections, which generated additional revenue related to penalties and interest, and we didn't have the reduction related to revenue that we thought if we didn't collect those. We also had a reduction in how much we owed in education tax based on what we abated in the prior year for flood to the tune of about $100,000. And then our HRA utilization was low. So I think that we will end FY25 in a surplus, not in a deficit. Our ambulance rate increase helped significantly. The projections, it came in higher than projections. So I do think that through, spending freezes and departments, holding strong, we were, even with the odds stacked against us and some large payouts, I expect that 25 will end in a surplus.
No, I'm really glad I asked that question.
I would say it out loud. The auditors agree with me, but I do, it was looking really rough for a while.
Yeah.
And, everything broke in our favor, and that was something the city really did.
Good job.
Anybody else? Okay, we have a couple of minutes and comments from the public. If there are questions from the public. Let me just see.
And then if anybody ever wants to come to my office and talk about budgeting, I am like all here for it. Ask me the hard questions, I'll get you the answers.
Great, thanks a lot. I always really appreciate the quality of the information you get to us, because that's what we rely on to make these decisions.
I can attest your door is always open.
All right, thank you. Let's see. 8:17. Why don't we take our break now and come back at 8:27, and we can start in on the Country Club Road. I will call the meeting back to order. Folks. And we are up to item 10. Country Club Road Infrastructure Design Approval. Revisiting that. Thank you, Kurt. And Mike.
Hello, I'm Kurt Modica, Director of Public Works. With me tonight is Mike Miller, Planning Director, and I believe also online is our consultant VHB. From VHB is Evan Dietrich. So I do have just a quick presentation that is similar or the same as the packet that we sent out to council. Just to give some visuals, there's a question about providing some visuals to the alternative that we're proposing for the reconstruction of Country Club Road. I'm gonna maybe dim the lights. Thank you. Okay, so we went through a number of alternatives. This presentation is really focused on the recommended alternative, which is to adjust the grade of Country Club Road to 12%, to elevate US Route 2 at the intersection of Country Club Road to improve the transition from the rail crossing, to center the road in the right of way, and to replace the utilities. So a visual of what the cross section of Country Club Road would look like under this alternative. Proposing a 5-foot sidewalk. This is sort of looking up the hill from the base of Country Club. So 2 10-foot travel lanes, a 2-foot shoulder along the sidewalk, and then a 6-foot bike lane on the uphill side. And then potentially trees, landscaping on the edges within the right of way. This is a cross section of what Route 2 looks like currently. This is facing east. So if you were facing west, you'd actually see the bike path which terminates at Country Club Road. So Route 2 has 2 11-foot lanes and 2 6-foot shoulders. So this is an illustration of the construction limits associated with the elevation of Route 2. So you can see where it's staying out of the rail right away. That's a whole another process to try to do any work within the rail right of ways that runs across Route 2. And there is, some grading transitions within the existing driveways that we need to tie into. But the limits of the impacts to Route 2 are, a few hundred feet to sort of gradually elevate the road and then gradually come back down to meet the existing grades. And then this is the impacts along Country Club Road associated with the new streetscape as well as the 12% grade adjustment. So the green is sort of the limits of grading, and you can see really closely the right of way is labeled. And we are outside of the right of way in some areas, so we would need to negotiate for at least temporary slope rights to do this work, and then some work to tie into the tractor supply driveway to regrade that. So basically, by adjusting the road grade, and we do have a profile that we can show you the change on that. We're dropping the elevation of Country Club Road through the midsection And so then that requires grading things back to get the slope stabilized. And this is the profile. So the upper dash line is the existing grade of Country Club Road. And the solid line down below is what we're proposing. So obviously at the two ends, it's meeting back into grade, but we're sort of taking a cut of a couple feet out of the middle to maintain a consistent 12% all the way. So the road is fairly close to 12%, but sort of at the beginning and the end, it ends up being a little bit steeper, or it is currently a little bit steeper. So we're taking that out. And so the estimate, as I mentioned at the beginning, is to reconstruct the road at 12% grade, center the streetscape within the right of way, to raise Route 2 to minimize the grade break at the rail crossing on Country Club Road, and to construct new water and sewer for the length of Country Club, and then all the way to the basically to the river crossing next to the roundabout. So the total cost of all that work is approximately $7.2 million. And what we're proposing is that this would be the basis for the DR grant application. And the engineering that would be required to get us up to 90% on the streetscape portion of the work would be included in that grant application. Right now, the design work on the utilities is already under contract to get to 90%. So this would only pertain to the streetscape portion. And then maybe Mike can speak a little bit more to the grant and the timeline associated with it. No,
I think Kurt did a pretty good job summarizing the disaster recovery grant. We still don't have confirmation. We're going to be working with the state, but this was a project they've encouraged us to continue to move forward on through the developer, which we talked about at the last meeting, and to continue the project itself, which is the infrastructure need in order to put in an application for disaster recovery, which would be due in the end of December, would be the start of that application process. So because that's 100% grant, what's important is we just need to know what we're applying for. If we don't get grants, we can always re-engineer and adjust plans later if we have to. But at this point, if we're applying for a grant, I think it makes sense for us to apply for what it is we think would be the best outcome for that project in the long run.
I'm open it up to questions from council, public.
Okay, thank you. Maybe we could turn the lights back on. Thanks, Evelyn. Ben.
So the project that we catalyst grants going in for MBRC?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. We will be trying for the catalyst grant as well. So if we got one, the catalyst grant isn't big enough to cover the entire cost. So if we got one, that would just reduce the amount of disaster recovery we would apply for at a later time.
So this work wouldn't begin until we found out about the grant. Is that how it works? Or we would apply for the whatever plan we choose. We would wait to see whether we got the grant or not, and then we would start the design work.
Yeah, that's correct on the streetscape portion. So the utility design is at 60% now. We're under contract to get it to 90. So we'll complete that. But yes, that's accurate. Not in the streetscape.
And is there any reason, this all makes sense to me. Is there any reason that we should be conscious of for why this might not be the best approach? Which I trust you that it is, but are there countervailing factors that we should be thinking about?
So we're proposing to do most of almost the best improvements that we can. The only thing that we're not suggesting is that we reconstruct the road at 10% grade, which is current development standards. But the grading impacts associated with that are pretty extensive, which is why we're not recommending that approach.
Yeah, I was trying to think about that, and the bottom is pretty much the same place. The top is the same place, so I guess you can reduce the grade by extending it, but other than that,
That's right. To get it to 10%, you'd have to do a lot more cutting sort of at the top.
Yeah.
Jump that down.
Council, any other questions at this moment? Jim, and then Palin.
I can't remember, does the power lines go up that road?
Not 100% sure, but that would be, where the layout was. Evan may know the answer to that question. He's on here.
Yeah, there's power lines down near the bottom of the hill, and I think there's a pole up near the top too. I don't know that the line is continuous though.
Could you repeat that, please? You were kind of quiet.
Sure. There is a power pole down at the bottom near the railroad tracks, and there's another pole up at the top, but I don't think the line is continuous all the way up the hill. I think the one at the top is fed from somewhere to the east.
Great, thank you. Councilman Palin.
So, you said it will be.
Could you bring the mic closer to yourself? Sorry. Sorry to keep bugging you on that.
No, okay, I think it's better. So you said it will be 100% grant funded. And if we don't get the grant, we can just like change the design, right? Or revise the design?
Yeah, at that point, we would probably, as we have with other East State Street and other projects, we'll probably have a conversation about what re-engineering. I mean, we were still talking between a $5 and $7 million project for all the water and sewer to get up there.
So if we don't get the grant, how much will we pay from our city budget? 5 million?
There are a number of other options that are going to start coming into play. So we have the Catalyst grant, which could be between $1 and $3 million. We have the disaster recovery, which is up to 10, but this is 7. We also have the opportunity to use the CHIP program as well. So if we had to, we could also wait until we have a developer and then build that cost into that. So rather that affects how much money we have to invest internally in the system. But it'll be a policy question for council. Where do we want to then apply that? We may have to wait until we have CHIP approval to go through and use that funding for the infrastructure.
So if we have to wait, it will be still okay with the plan, right? Because after listening to Sarah's presentation, like we need to have paving and everything, right? Then if we want to spend 5 or more million here, I prefer spending that much money downtown and just like improve our infrastructure first. So as you were saying, if we don't get the funding, then we can just pause this, or we can't because of the developers and everything.
Yeah, I think you're on the mark with what you're saying, because there certainly isn't in any capital plan at this point. So there is no $5 million that's in a capital plan to go and say, well, if we don't get the grant, bond for it. Now, that's not to say council doesn't have powers to do things, but that's just saying it's not certainly not in any plan. It certainly hasn't been in our plan. The planning department has moved forward with Country Club Road project with the intention of trying to have it pay for itself, whether it's through TIF or CHIP or grants. That has been our mission. Now, if we reach a point where it can't happen, that's one we'll have to come back to and say, here's where we're at. It's going to require investment. This is what it's going to cost. We'll have to make a decision, a stop-go decision at that point. At this point, as I said, we're looking at putting this in the grant. We'll know, in the next 4 months, we'll be going through and talking to developers, see how much interest we have. We'll be putting in the Northern Borders grant in October. This grant, if we are eligible and are able to put it in, this would go in December. We'd hear about it in February. So we will know in 6 months really where we stand on a lot of infrastructure.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Adrian.
I was just looking at the map, and so can you just share, is there like a co-application or partnership with the state of Vermont, since there's some interaction with Route 2? Like, what does that look like? Is that a risk or a positive?
Yeah, so Montpelier actually controls the right of way for Route 2. So we can dig water lines, put pipes in without any authorization or permission from the state, even though it is a Class 1 highway. So understanding is that we can do this work as long as it meets all federal transportation codes. So it's not a partnership per se. I mean, we would certainly work with the state on it, but we don't necessarily need their authorization because the city basically owns the right of way in that area.
Joe.
Let me unmute. Sorry. Let me lower my hand.
Well
Sorry
done.
about that. I have a couple of questions, most for VHB and one for Mike. One of the questions I had, so how much are we raising Route 2? Is it between 2 and 4 feet to reach the level of the railroad grade? The other thing is, what about drainage for the properties that are across the road, say the Agway and other stuff like that? What's your estimate on the right-of-way acquisition costs? And the question for Mike would be, what are the odds that we would get the grant?
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Yes, we are raising the grade of Route 2 roughly 2.5 to 3 feet. And of course, it tapers back to 0 at either end. But in the intersection of Country Club Road, it's a little under 3 feet. That doesn't take care of meeting the grade of the railroad, but it makes a great improvement there where the drivers coming down the hill or going up the hill would feel much less of a grade break as you cross the railroad tracks. The budget that we've shared with the city does have $30,000 in right-of-way acquisition costs, which is pretty much a guess at this point. The right-of-way of Route 2 is quite wide, so we don't really expect right-of-way impacts along the Route 2 corridor. They would be mostly on the Country Club Road parcels. And the road is super elevated towards the railroad in that area, so it's banked towards the railroad. So we wouldn't expect any adverse drainage impacts to any of the adjacent properties. The water would drain to the west down to the river, and there would be stormwater treatment added, that sort of thing. But we wouldn't really see any kind of significant impact to any of the properties as far as stormwater.
Thank you.
Thanks, Evan. Ben, were you raising your hand for a moment? Okay. Folks, anything else? Yeah, Steve.
Absent a master plan, and absent a plan to mitigate our tenant, we have a tenant with Turtle Island up there. How do we propose all those parents and children going up and down this road while it's getting rebuilt? Unless we're gonna do it on nights and weekends. I just think I call it a folly, that VHB option to raise Route 2 and rebuild Country Club Road is being advanced without any consultation with VTrans or the Regional Planning Commission. Regional staff have indicated they're unlikely to support raising Route 2. Our neighboring towns are concerned that we would think we could just go ahead and do this without consulting them on the impacts. This makes it a multi-million-dollar concept with little chance of approval, yet tens of thousands of Montpelier's limited planning dollars have already been spent on it. That's a misuse of scarce resources. Smarter priorities. Instead of chasing a road expansion that's unlikely to succeed right now, we should be focusing on what is feasible and fundable. the multi-use path with emergency access through Sabins, utility extensions that support both Sabins build-out and Country Club Road resilience uses. These are achievable with disaster recovery block grants, and they strengthen two housing sites at once, both Country Club and Sabins. Recommendation is simple. Pause the road option until after a master plan is completed and consultations with state and regional partners are settled. Put our energy into the multi-use path designed to support an emergency vehicle, a fire truck or an ambulance as egress. The fact that we've got a willingness from those owners to accept a multi-use path and not a road, yet our game plan appears to still intend on ramming a road down their throat. Resilience, put our energy into multi-use path resilience projects and housing that Montpelier can actually deliver. That's how we'll gain credibility with state funders and make real progress. This is not about saying no, it's about saying yes to the right priorities in the right order.
Thanks, Steve. Council members, anything else? Is there a motion? I think what we're looking for here is a motion to approve the proposal 4A.
I'm happy to make a motion that we approve the recommendation for option A.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thanks very much. Thanks, Mike and Kurt. Kurt, I think you're probably staying here because we're up to State and Elm always stop analysis. Will you have visuals for this? Should we be?
No, it's just pulling up my notes here.
Okay. Yeah, I think we all know what that intersection looks like.
Yeah. Okay. Again, I'm Kurt Monica, Director of Public Works. As part of our construction project on State Street last year, to improve the safety of the intersection while it was a one-lane road, we installed stop signs at the intersection of State Street and Elm Street. And that was intended at first to be a temporary measure. I've received quite a bit of feedback from the public in support of the change and interest in keeping them as a permanent stopped intersection, four-way or all-way stopped intersection. And within the city's ordinances, permanent stop signs really need to be approved by the city council. So tonight, just want to present the impacts of those stop signs on traffic flow. Our staff did a traffic count in the AM peak and the PM peak hours, and then we worked with a consultant to do sort of a high level study of the impacts of the intersection with and without the stop signs. So there are some benefits and some drawbacks to keeping these stop signs in place permanently. Most significantly, the improvement is at Elm Street. Of course, it's difficult to make a left coming off Elm with the traffic on State Street. So there's a fairly significant improvement to traffic off Elm Street with the stop signs in place. Conversely, there is a slight negative impact to vehicles traveling on State Street in the form of delays, but they're relatively small. So we're looking at roughly a 5-second delay or so. So the way we look at traffic impacts is through level of service. So there's 6 categories, A through F, of level of service for traffic. A being the best with essentially no delays, and F being the worst with over a 50-second delay. So right now with the way it's structured is that everything, well, without the stop signs, or without the new stop signs on State Street, there is an existing stop sign on Elm. But without the two new ones on State Street, the poorest level of service is on Elm, and that's a C. By the addition of the stop signs, that goes up to a level of service B. So basically, there are a few criteria that we look at as far as recommending permanent signs being added. That's the safety of pedestrians. It's the level of service. And basically what we're recommending tonight is that because the level of service reductions on State Street are fairly minimal, and that we are gaining improvements at the Elm Street intersection, and that the conditions at the intersection do warrant or allow for, we're not required to put stop signs in under the current conditions, but it's certainly allowable. And given that there's not significant negative impacts to the traffic along State Street, and that there's improvements on Elm as well as improvements to pedestrian safety, we are recommending to keep these in permanently. So there's some, if council does choose to keep these in place permanently, we do need to paint the stop bars. That's sort of our top priority if this does get approved tonight. That makes will really, I think, improve compliance. There, some of the comments I got is that not everybody is currently stopping at those stop signs. So we did add some flags and signs to try to improve visibility and get people to really notice those, but also the stop bars we think will really improve compliance. So that's top on our list if this does get approved tonight.
Kurt, is there the capacity to put one of those flashing red lights suspended over the intersection the way we have at some of the other intersections like Elm Court?
Yeah, that certainly could be done. There's some capital expense to that. So my suggestion would be that we first add the stop bars, evaluate the compliance at that point, and then if needed, then we would implement the flashing lights.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else? Any members of the public? Is there a motion? Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thanks, Kurt. All right. Item 12, public hearing for community development block grant, DR applications. And even though you're going to present, I'll open the public hearing right now, just so I don't forget. And you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mike Miller, Planning Director. So yeah, I did have a reminder to make sure we open the public hearing because this is a public hearing. So in order to apply for a community development block grant, we are required to hold a public hearing. And the hearing is to obtain the views of citizens on community development, furnish information concerning the amount of funds that would be available and the range of community development activities that may be taken under this program, impact any archaeological and historic resources that may affect the proposed project, and to give affected citizens the opportunity to examine the proposed statement of projected use of these funds. So this is going to be a public hearing to really talk about our grant application. These are 100% no match grants. So these are all federal monies. These were set aside as a result of the flood itself. After a flood, a certain amount of the funds gets allocated to the community development program, CDBG program, and they administer these funds back to the municipalities in the areas that were impacted by the flood. So that's why we are eligible. The 4 projects that we have applied for or are going to be applying for. The first one is, we'll call it $760,000, which is going to be used to remove the Pioneer Dam, Pioneer Street Dam, and 25,000 cubic yards of impounded sediment. Funds will also be used for floodplain restoration at 5 Home Farm Way, including the removal of 21,000 cubic yards of material. Should increase the flood resiliency upstream of the city and hopefully impact flood levels downstream as well. So the second is a little over $3 million, which will be used to protect the Montpelier Water Resource Recovery Facility, which is our sewer plant. And this will protect it from future flooding by installing a bypass pipe and by berming up and elevating Dog River Road. The third project is $1.93 million, which will be used to remove the Bailey Dam and 32,000 cubic yards of impounded sediment that's behind the dam. And the fourth project is a grant to replace 3 culverts on Elm Street. They basically start at Finch Road and head towards the reservoir. So we're talking about out on Elm Street, out in that direction. There are 3 culverts that failed during recent floods and need to be replaced. So we are looking for about $2.5 million for that project. So those are the 4 proposals. And then once we have the hearing, if council would make a motion to approve the 4 resolutions that are in your book, please sign those 4 resolutions, because I will need them for the grants. So.
All right, since this is a public hearing, I'll ask if there's any member of the public who wishes to make a comment on any of these proposals. And I'll ask you, Mike, have you received any comments from the public on what we're proposing to do?
No, not at this time. I would have forwarded it to you if we had received it.
Thanks. Seeing no public comment in the room or online, I'll close the public hearing and open it for council discussion. We might not get all of these, right?
We might not get approved for all of them.
Yeah.
We really have no idea how this is going to go. Our conversations with the staff seem very highly supportive of the water resource recovery facility and the Pioneer Dam projects. The other 2, they gave us suggestions, which we are working on, of ways that we could strengthen those applications. The culverts, they felt, you know, maybe we only get 1 of the 3 culverts funded instead of all 3, but our best thing to do is to put in all the applications and see which ones get funded. But we are optimistic we will get some of them.
Great. Council members, any comments or questions? All right, I'd entertain a motion to approve this proposal. Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. This is great.
They should be in your book.
John's got them.
Yes.
They're coming around. All right, thank you. All right, next up, special events, items 14 and 15.
Bringing the special events policy back in front of you. As you recall, we did take this policy up back in the spring, I think. So it's been quite some time. And so we wanted to get it back in front of you to get a decision on the draft policy. And if you should so choose to go with this policy, then we would need to make an ordinance change. And so that's what's before us tonight for these 2 items. So I'm going to let Zach and Deputy Chief Moulton get to it with the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. My name is Zach Blodgett, and I'm the Deputy Director for Public Works. Kevin Moulton is with me. And we're bringing this forward as part of the public safety team. In your packets, we provided you with a whole bunch of documentation, one being the data log, the memo that we wrote, a proposed fee schedule, a draft ordinance change, some example policies, and the street closure policy. So first, why are we looking at this? There's two main reasons. One is cost, and the second one, which is a really big one, is resource allocation. Events take a lot of staff resource time. So in our review of the data, we looked at, we basically found that events have three different categories: small events, medium events, large events. The small events are very little staff resource time. Medium events, it's been about 25 to 50 hours to have staff support a medium event. A large event, it requires a significant amount of staff time, typically a minimum of 50 hours, upwards to 100 plus, and that's specifically time for the event only. So things that are not included in that are our pre-planning time, our time meeting with the event coordinators to go over logistics, the 3 or 4 meetings that we have to go through what we need from them, the insurance certificates, and all the work that it takes to actually get the event up to speed. One of the things that I want to stress the most is that our ultimate goal is to make sure that we provide events to the public and for the community while maintaining safety for them. We want to be able to provide these events, but at the end of the day, we have limited resources, and we need to make sure that when we have an event, that everyone is safe to do so. So that's kind of the why we're looking at this. It's really just about the cost for the event, recovering the resources that we're putting forth. We spend a lot of money in departmental costs to support these events. The next thing is what we've seen over the past couple of years. So we have 3 years worth of data, but specifically over the last year, we've seen entities have a different desire to have an event, right? So what may have previously been a sidewalk closure event with very little resources, there's a bigger want to have a street closure or to have something that would require more resources to be deployed. Those events to put out crash barriers it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of DPW resources. It takes a lot of PD and fire resources as well. Again, the biggest thing is for the safety of the general public. So right now we're at 27 events for this year. I anticipate that we're going to be over 30 events total with over 400 hours of staff time directly related to supporting that event. There was a circumstance in New Orleans where they decided not to deploy their crash barricades, the exact same ones that we have, and because of resource allocation. And New Orleans is getting sued because they had the tools and they failed to use them appropriately to protect the public. So when we want to make sure that we have events, that we support them, but we also need to make sure that we're doing it safely for everybody. Next is we went and we've looked at some different communities, both Burlington, Stowe, St. Albans. They all have policies in place to have fee recovery for these events. And it is common with many other communities across the nation. Typically, what you see is that some communities decide that maybe the smaller events, they're not going to charge, that those are more community oriented, but the larger events that maybe bring in a profit or are not necessarily a small entity, they may charge for those. So in the policy that we have put forward to you, profit events would be charged, but the council would have the ability to waive or reduce fees for other events. So we would give you the ability to make that decision moving forward for all the other events. What we're recommending is obviously to adopt the policy that we've amended, including the fee structure, with you guys having the ability to reduce or waive the fees. One thing that I would like to note that Moving forward with the package that you guys get every time that we have a permit, you guys review them. What I would like to see moving forward is that we provide you with an estimate that is physically attached to the packet. So when you guys are reviewing a permit, you see that's going to be, I don't know, 100 hours of staff total time for this particular event. And that's going to take, 6 officers on overtime. That's going to be 5 DPW. That's going to be 4 EMS. So that when you're approving the permit, you get a real picture of that true cost for that particular event. And then lastly, something that we've already put into motion is we've created a special account code that at a minimum internally will be used to track those costs. And then there would be a transfer over so that it's not impacting each of the individualized department budgets. I guess with that, I'll open it up for any questions that you might have.
Folks, any questions?
Yes.
Well, thank you. This is great. I loved all the information. It's super helpful to, I mean, you all know I like data. So thank you for taking the time to hold all this information. I just want to make sure, one, I do like the line in here that the council can have a decision to waive a fee if we like, I like that kind of out just in case. And I do like the profit events being charged. I just want to make sure, I don't know if we've thought about this as like a process, but we have reoccurring events every year. And so it would be nice to maybe intentionally invite them to our public hearing. Just do some outreach to make sure we get their feedback. Are there any unintended consequences that we're not thinking about with this policy? Like, I really want these folks to take a look at this and make sure, because I've helped run a bunch of these events and we plan 12 months ahead of time. And so if we're aware that there's going to be additional cost, it's fine. We just have to put that as part of our planning to raise money or put it in our budget. But I would not want to see some of these events not come to Montpelier because it's too expensive.
Yeah, I think that's really one of the big pieces about changing the language to not just waive the fee, but to waive or reduce. Waive kind of seems like it's all or nothing.
Yeah.
So the language, changing that language to waive or reduce would give you the ability to say, you know what, for this event, we're not going to charge equipment time, or we're going to give you the flexibility to make those changes. And I'm perfectly okay with reaching out to those event organizers and having some discussions with them. I will say that when we sat down with the Corporate Cup and went over like the cost of the event, they had no idea how much it took for us to manage their event, right? And there's a lot of time in there that is not even captured on this work order. We're looking at work orders of 10,000 for one year and around 7,000 for another year. And that doesn't include the 60 or so hours that we spend, sweeping the roads and doing patching before that. And that's because those things we're going to do anyways, they're maintenance. So we didn't charge that to the work order. But there's a lot of other time that we spend organizing it. I mean, we have, 8 to 10 staff that are in these planning meetings with these organizers specifically for Corporate Cup. So it's a lot, and that isn't even captured in this work order that we're talking about or what's in here right now. So.
I mean, I think the events would be open. They just need to be aware, they need to plan, they need to put it in their budget, to have that, communication from the city that we are changing this policy. I think that would be very helpful. And I think, these are economic drivers. So we have to also weigh, we're working with Montpelier Live to think of how we can bring more events. And so it's like, how do we weigh all the resources of the city with trying to bring in more events so that we can, have, a stronger economy and people spending money in our stores. So I'm hoping the number of events go up, but we're going to have to charge because it's also your time. And then what if you're at capacity, right? So I think we're going to all have to work very closely together with this to make sure as we build additional events, we're not, stretching the system too much. But I you know what I mean? I think just being aware of that, but I just want to make sure all these partners are very closely involved in this process.
Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. I just want to make one suggestion. Are you planning to put this information on the application form somewhere? So when people or organization committee, when they are filling out the form, they can see this information.
Like the fee schedule?
Yeah.
Yes, that would be part of the application, right? And then when we review it as the public safety team, what we put as a package that comes to you includes our estimate at that point in time. So you're getting a full packet at the council level that says, here's the event, here's what the public safety team has deemed all of the necessary components for this. And then that would also be provided to the applicant.
Okay. So my question was, I want to have an event here in Montpelier, and I'm for filling out the form. Do I see the fees when I do the application form? Okay.
Yeah, the fee schedule would be attached to the application, and then they could see all of the different components. They may need to ask us and work with us to say, because they may not know how many DPW employees that we feel are going to be needed in order to have a successful event. A lot of times what they'll tell us is we want to close Bailey Ave or State Street. And then we say, well, if you're going to close State Street, then you need crash barricades on either end. If we don't have crash barricades, then we need DPW in vehicles to be at either side. So it's that part of the logistics when they bring forth their application that we can sit with them and say, based on the information you provided, this is what we anticipate the fees to
So
be.
each event is unique, so their fee will be different. That's why there will be general information in the application form, but each event should come and talk to you and they will have different.
And some applicants may choose when they see the fees, right, to alter their event to something that may not be so resource heavy to the city.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
So
how do you think that will alter the application process? I mean, do you think people will fill out the form, send it to you? You'll go through and do the estimate and get it back to them and they'll say, holy mackerel, and then have to revise it? Or, I mean, is it going to add complexity and time on both ends, or?
I mean, there's already some of that, right? Because we've been having these discussions with some of the entities and just about being able to staff their events. And they, in some instances, have had to change kind of what they wanted because of our ability to assist them. So that's already kind of happening. This would be a little bit more formal, that like, here's what you're asking for.
So it doesn't really add a whole step. It's just.
Yeah.
I think it adds some clarity to when they have an event and they can see the fee structure. I think it adds a little bit of clarity to them to know what's involved on their event.
Yeah, they'll see the structure, but they won't know how many, pieces of equipment, how many personnel they'll need. So they'll know they're going to be paying for that. They just won't know the quantity until you guys get a hold of it, right? Are we expecting they'll contact you before they submit an application, or is it going to be an iterative process where it's going back and forth?
So,
I mean, I guess that could add a step for us if we wanted to be upfront with them and once we get the application. I think part of this packet shows a change in what is in ordinance now that says 3 days notice to the chief of police, which is not reasonable on any level. To a 30-day notice. I think that gives us the time to, we meet every 2 weeks as a public safety team. We can look at this, we could, email them back the estimate, and then we could have a dialogue about their.
Well, I was just thinking, to Adrian's point, it might be good to communicate with all of the, all of the organizers of past events on what process you'd prefer, or ask them for input on how they feel the process will change, just so that they're not caught unaware or get tangled up in something that's more complicated than they thought it was going to be.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have any problem with going through that. It might be helpful to kind of do a 1 page of like the process that we envision, so that when we can provide that to the applicants, like, here's what we entail. I mean, yes, we have a policy, but kind of a step-by-step. You will submit this. We will then provide you with an estimate. Then it will go to the public safety team. Once approved by the public safety team, it would go to council for approval, so on.
Thanks for all the hard work on this. I think probably the biggest problem is going to be the first year. I think it'll get easier with everybody, especially the ones that keep coming back. So the first year is probably going to be a little rough, and that it's always kind of the way it is. You got to work through the bumps and everything. But I think after that, people will know what's expected and it'll get better. So, buckle up for that first year a little bit, but I think once we get by that, it'll only get better. So thank you.
Ben?
Yeah, I have a couple questions about, I mean, thanks for the work, and I also appreciate the data that you put into it. I guess I have a question of and don't take this wrong way, but what's the problem? Is the problem the fact that this is costing actual money that's impacting the public safety budgets, right? That so it's overtime, things like that are impacting the budget.
Typically, like corporate cup.
Yeah.
All hands on deck for the police.
Right.
Mandatory overtime.
Guys.
Every officer's working. We actually have to hire the sheriff department personnel, which comes out of.
And it's your budget.
Out of our budget.
Right.
Some of the smaller events, it's just an hour of staff time at the applications that are going through. But the medium to large events,
right,
significant cost.
So that thank you. That's very helpful. And then the second thing I have a question about is just really this capacity issue, right? It's if you're having a smaller event and it's just however many officers or police you have on staff, are you bringing on more people for that event to cover that event, or is it just people who are regularly on duty and that's just something that's happening that you're aware of?
So for the small events, it's typically something that we just the letter on duty will just
figure it out.
They'll make a presence if they can, if we're not away on a call. The medium to larger events, I'm ordering people for work.
Right.
And these are people that have weekends off every third month.
Right.
So for me to order them to work on one of their weekends off is, it's hard.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to strike a balance where, the needs of the requester. I think that 30 days gives us a little flexibility. 3 days was not enough time.
Totally.
Keep our plans for the weekend.
Yeah. I really appreciate all of that. A couple of things that strike me are that if I look at this, $35,900, 2/3 of that cost comes from 3 events, if I understand this correctly, right? And so I wonder, instead of having something in there that says every time a medium event comes to us and they get a fee schedule that says $3,000 that we consider whether or not we want to waive it, what if we just set a threshold for when you hit a larger event, you'll be expected to subsidize that event at this level? And it just makes it, I think, a lot. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I think you
please.
see that in Burlington's policy. I think their threshold is any event that brings in 1,000 people. I'm not quite certain about them, but any event that brings in a significant amount of people, they're required to pay for services.
Yeah, I mean, you've done a good job here of delineating the different sizes of events, and it just strikes me if that's the driver of cost, and kind of going back to something you said, Adrian, about we want events, right? I feel like I go to communities every day and have more events, get more people in your downtown, get more, right? And I think I totally really appreciate what the motivation here on your end and really respect it and want to honor it. But I do fear that this is going to create fewer events or people, being reluctant to have events. And so I really want that all species day, that kind of weird, unique Montpelier thing to happen. And I just feel if we set some kind of threshold, that I think we could maybe look at that or make that happen where we can really cut maybe 2/3 of the cost of this just based on that. And then the final thing I'll just say is the one main kind of concern that I had unrelated to the cost was just, I think I'm understanding that Montpelier Alive right now is a part of the conversations about events. And if I read the revised version, that they would kind of be dropped from the advisory panel. And I would just really love to see the integration of Montpelier Alive into these kinds of conversations moving forward. It's important.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah.
So we did have Montpelier Live review the policy. And so the reason why we sort of changed the way the policy is structured right now is just the jurisdiction. So for example, when we're reviewing these events, you know, while they would be a member sort of advocating on behalf or working with the business community, and we really value their input, you know, it's really sort of the public safety components associated with these events that, you know, we were trying to capture. We did check with Katie to make sure that we weren't, you know, leaving them out of the process. We have worked in a new, well, not new, something that we really have really punched up, I think, over the last couple of months is the calendar and making sure that they get online so that then they have access to them. And then we do need to work with them a little bit more in terms of, you know, what they would really like to see is they would like to see these events coming in so that they have an awareness and so that they can work then with the businesses and making sure that then, you know, whatever the sports might be downtown that they need, that they can see, you know, that then, you know, they're part of that conversation. But then in terms of public safety, you know, that's not necessarily something that
Yeah, I
they would
mean,
be engaged in.
I appreciate that, but I also think like Montpelier Alive participating in the conversation and the police department maintaining jurisdiction over public safety, like those aren't mutually exclusive. Like I think that can, you know, I mean, I don't, Katie runs Montpelier Alive, right? Like she should advocate, but like it struck me that it seems like best practice would be to have like everybody around the table that's involved in events for the good of the entire picture of the city.
Any other questions or comments from the council? It strikes me that, for one thing, you notice I didn't open this as a public hearing. If we decide to go forward, and I'm getting a sense that people are interested in going forward, then the next thing that we would do would be to set this for a public hearing to discuss the actual ordinance. And it strikes me that we've heard from Ben a couple of potential amendments to an ordinance when it gets to that point. You know, the scope of the fees, the potential role of Montpelier Alive, and there may be others. I think it's very important to get the input from people who conduct these events, because I think we're dealing with a couple of very significant considerations. One is we have and will continue to have limited financial resources, and when we have to be aware of that and be aware of the impact on especially DPW and police, fire and ambulance also. But we also want to have events. We want to have more events, and so it's really the balancing.
And if I could say like, you know, I haven't been through a budget season yet, but like, it just really strikes me that it's like, I'm really cognizant of the way in which this is impacting and causing budget pressures in your department that really, I'm not sure should be borne by that specific budget, right? Like if we value events as a city and see it as an economic development strategy, like, is there another line item or another way in which we're paying for that support of these events that shouldn't undermine like your ability to hire, you know, bring people on for overtime when there's when you really have a shortage.
Like our current budget here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have, in the last couple of years, looked at the whole question of overtime, and is there a way to limit overtime to bring the budget under control? And it's very, very difficult because these events, some of them we can plan for, some of them we don't know whether they're going to happen. And so overtime is, as much as we try to control it, overtime is not subject to our control. So I guess what I would look for at this point is see if people want to go forward. Is there a motion to schedule a public hearing on the draft ordinance that's in the packet? There.
Yeah, I'm all for it, and we're moving forward. But when I look at the policy and the ordinance, I start to get a little confused about the wording here and there, and are they all lining up? And I'm not sure that the proposed language change to the ordinance quite lines up with what's being proposed in the policy. So that's my only caution, is to say, let's make sure we get that really nailed down tightly before we start having public hearings on it.
Oh, so you want, so you're not ready to move for a public hearing because you want to
No, I mean,
send staff back
could-
for,
we could go ahead and schedule one, but I just want to make sure that it's really, all the editing and everything is done before we actually have a hearing.
all right. So where does that leave us? Do you have particular suggestions for tonight, or?
Well, are we talking about the ordinance
Yeah,
now? So just looking over it quickly, it's originally a parade ordinance. And then the title was changed to special events, but then parade keeps showing up throughout the ordinance, and it doesn't address special events in the ordinance. And so that was the big thing, just to make sure that that's clear.
Mhm.
And then I also wasn't sure if it referenced the policy, and I'm a little unclear on the relationship between policy and ordinance. And so if maybe we have a clear policy and it's referenced in the ordinance saying, according to the policy, and then we can make policy changes in the future if we want to, and without having to make ordinance changes.
so,
I've made some notes on those issues that I'll be happy to organize and send to Kelly, and from there it can go wherever it needs to go. We can then.
Yeah, great.
collaborate on that.
Yeah, I want to-
and so would you like to see those changes from Kelly before we schedule a public hearing? All right,
Just for clarity, and I appreciate that, getting sort of the changes right here, the intention within sort of the draft ordinance language was to capture some of the elements of the policy. So for instance, we really wanted to make sure we captured the 72 hours, 30 days rather than 72 hours, making sure that we were making that sort of accommodation without totally striking the ordinance itself. So, making sure that we were striking a balance between, really being consistent with what the intention is of the ordinance, making it more inclusive. So, I do see that the point about the parade language and making sure it's consistent throughout the ordinance. And then also making any other adjustment that you would like to see in this ordinance for these special events to make sure that it is reflective of intent. And then just the sort of the distinction between a policy and an ordinance is that the, policy is way more flexible, and can be changed, based on practice, whereas the ordinance is enforceable. And is, a little bit more structured, and codified in that way. So, happy to changes and also bring it back to you, with those changes. So I appreciate you taking the time to look at it. And then going through the policy with us to talk through some of the things. And then we also, can maybe modify the policy to include just, our intention was not to exclude Montpelier Live. I just want to make that clear too.
No, totally. I get it,
So,
yeah.
so like we're happy to make sure that, their role in the process of reviewing those events, because the downtown business community is very important to us. And, the events are important. So all of this is about striking a balance between sort of like what we need. So this conversation has been really good. It's been a long time coming. So I appreciate your patience, and also just the team really did do a great job of putting the details together, and I can kind of see how that really helped with the conversation. So we're happy to bring the ordinance back. And I will totally take you up on your offer to, provide some comments here for us to get in there with, so.
all right. So it seems like we don't need to take action tonight. We'll hear from you again. Yes, you can, Steve.
Thanks, guys.
We're still in the process of formulating what it's going to be. So,
Raise a couple of cautions, Steve Whitaker. I like the idea of setting a threshold that only the big profitable events get charged at all. I think Montpelier Live would be an invaluable contributor to help helping determine or make a recommendation, an affirmative recommendation on whether to waive any or all of the smaller ones, because they bring an economic benefit that outweighs the cost. I can see as a taxpayer that people are going to feel like something we've been paying for in our tax base is now no longer here and be billed. We've been paying for it because we like it, and now we're gonna quit doing it. We're no longer going to have that as part of our package of city benefits, and we're going to shift the cost to the presenters. And some of the presenters rely on a whole bunch of volunteers, and their volunteers are going to say, hell, if we have to pay $2,000 for this, we're not going to volunteer anymore. So this thing could really disrupt a lot of the fabric of kind of volunteer and enthusiasm to hold events. I can see people just saying it's not worth it, like our developers. Montpelier can screw anything up. So I'm just raising those as cautions. I don't have all the answers, but I see it's fraud. I'd also like to get to the bottom of how much have they been charging people while no one noticed. You know, how much revenue did they bilk out of people without any authority under an ordinance? You know.
All right, thank you. Yes, Chief.
It is currently an ordinance that can't charge for events. I just want to make that clear.
You're not bilking anybody? Thank you. All right, so Kelly, we'll hear back from you. Thanks, folks. Now we're up to appointments to the Development Review Board.
I'll move them, but if they want to speak, I'd like have them come up and speak.
Sure.
You've been waiting here long enough.
Well, I appreciate you including me. It's quite a meeting you've had here, I'll tell you. And thank you for the presentation. I've never seen one like that since I was a Disney. Very, very good, by the way. And thank you. I appreciate your working on literal language too.
Thank you.
That's all. Well, who are you? First of all, I'm Bill Charlie. And
why don't you stay by the table just so you're on the microphone and you're on the camera.
Of course, sorry, I'm used to giving, presentations to large groups.
Yeah, you got a good voice for it.
No microphone and stuff like that. Okay, we got it. I'm Bill Charlie, and I put in my application to join the DRB, mainly just to help out where I could. You have my answers to my application. I don't know whether I could add any more to that. You're welcome to ask me questions about that. I certainly noted the gentleman up front. I think he was the first speaker from the audience who talked about legal expertise. I do not have a real estate legal degree by any chance, or any legal degree. I am not a city planner. I am not a parliamentarian either. But I think I might be able to bring something to the DRB based on the experience I've had. And it's in the application answers briefly, very briefly, by the way. But I thought if you wanted to ask me questions about any detail that was in that application, I'd be glad to answer it.
Great,
but I'd like to keep us within the 5 minutes and keep it short. I understand you've been through, and we all have sat through quite a meeting, not been to one like this recently. So I'm going to try to keep it short, and I'll answer though any questions I can as briefly as I can.
Thank you for volunteering to do this. Are there any questions? Jim.
I'll be glad to move his appointment and the other person's appointment. I don't know if they're here and they want to speak.
So the motion is to appoint Bill Jolly and Elvira Dana to the Development Review Board.
Yeah. Before you vote on that, may I put in something?
Sure.
You have two vacancies, I understand it. You have a termed one, which I think is 28 or 29 or something like that. And then you have an alternate. I'm requesting that I go into the alternate.
Okay.
I know that's your choice, and that's fine. I'll certainly go along with whatever you choose.
But I would prefer, and I've discussed this with Meredith, I would prefer to have the alternate position be assigned.
I'll make that part of my motion.
Great.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
Any opposed? Thanks for coming in. I really appreciate it.
Hey, your meetings not go this late.
All right. Chief Libby, come on up.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Chief Department for Fire and EMS. Coming for you tonight, we get approval for a rate increase. As you see in your packet for ambulance billing, as you see in your packet, we came back in March and did a midterm rate increase, which we hadn't done any rate increases in a number of years. So, you know, at that point, we were just trying to collect and get to where we're actually covering some of the costs and taking some of the burden off the tax base. So tonight, coming forward, and my intention is going forward that we do this once a year, and it's not a midterm thing, but that we take care of it. Medicare rates are set in January during the budgeting process. We would be able to figure out what our rates are in accordance with what the Medicare rates are set, and then, you know, come forward with that rate increase before the July 1st fiscal year starts. So what you see in your packet is where we're at today compared to our neighboring agencies, the differences, and then the recommendation to bring us up to those rates. So I'm happy to take any questions, but I also want to keep your time valuable.
Thank you. Folks, any questions? I think this is a great idea. I was on the Montpelier Housing Authority Board for many years, and one of the concerns we had with some of our projects is that sometimes we would go for several years without an increase, and then when we had to do an increase, it would hit people hard. And so getting on a regular schedule of increasing, I think makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve the proposed rate increases? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Yeah, you can.
Last, just briefly again, there needs to be informed consent of the, especially with the non-transport ambulance calls, that people are not, and I even asked Officer Philbrick, he was not aware that we had raised these rates, and you're potentially treating somebody on the side of the road. You know, we have a lot of those unhoused people getting treated for some malady or another, not able to get up or walk, or a lady laying with her on the side of the road with her legs hanging out in the street. And those are potentially $750 bills that people aren't informed that if you have to refuse treatment altogether, refuse transport, refuse treatment altogether, or you're going to be potentially liable for $700 and something. And I just don't think that the awareness is out there yet that accepting a blood pressure check from an ambulance driver could cost that. So I'm no expert on this topic, but it scares me that people could potentially be incurring these bills unwittingly. That again, we've grown accustomed to thinking they're part of our city package of services. So I don't have the answers. I'm just raising the caution.
Okay, thank you. Chief, do you have a response to that?
Yes. So happy to address it. The fee is not $750. That's a $450 fee. And as you see in your packet, there's certain criteria that need to be met. And if those criteria aren't met, including having the patient sign that they've been educated, and that EMS protocols were conducted, then it's not a billable incident. So.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Great. We got a motion in a second already, didn't we? Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thanks, chief. Item 19. Someone's got to be last, Kurt. Leachate acceptance.
Kurt Monica, Public Works Director. So this topic tonight is to discuss the number of or the volume of leachate that the city is allowed or authorized, the staff is authorized to take from city council per day. But just to give this, there's been a lot of discussion around this topic over the years through several different councils. So just going to give a little background of how we got here and where we're at now, and yeah, just to provide some background. So starting with the biggest issue associated with leachate treatment historically has been concerns around PFAS. And so PFAS is what's known as the forever chemical. So it's a long chemical carbon chain that just doesn't break down. So these carbon chains they're really hard to break apart. Very strong chemical formula, and they're used in primarily like waterproofing, so umbrellas and the Gore-Tex and even rugs and furniture have a lot of PFAS in them. And so most of these materials end up in the landfill eventually, and then they tend to leach off, over time and end up collecting the bottom of the landfill in the form of leachate. So the concentrations of PFAS in leachate is comparably high compared to other sources of PFAS. But PFAS is pretty much in everything, or most people have it in their bodies, and we also get a lot of PFAS coming through the pipes to the plant. Just everything from detergents to whatever other things people are flushing down the toilets. So the city's been accepting leachate since approximately 2002. That's when we constructed the receiving station at the plant. There was state assistance in that, as there's a need for a disposal site for leachate as well as septage. So both of those, septage and leachate, started at our plant in around 2002. The most we've ever received historically is 4 loads a day. And 1 load is approximately 8,000 gallons. So the total max we've taken is around 32,000 gallons a day. Currently, we're the only facility in the state that's allowed to take leachate through our permit. No other wastewater plant in Vermont applied to get permitted to accept leachate, and so they're not authorized to. And the revenue component, we do charge to accept and treat leachate. It's approximately $100,000 per load received per day annually. So a history of the motions made by council. In 2002, council noted after the concerns around PFAS were raised that in July 23, we would not accept leachate here unless it was first treated to remove PFAS. In the summer of 22, the city authorized, or the council authorized staff to apply for an application for $1 million through ARPA funds as a pass-through grant to Casella to construct a PFAS treatment system. And in February of 24, the state, Casella, and DPW co-presented to council around what the anticipated regulations would be for surface water discharge, which is what our plant puts out. So currently there are limits for drinking water, but there are no limits for wastewater plant discharge, and there still is not any established limits in Vermont for the amount of PFAS that can be discharged from the facility. At that meeting, council made a motion that only leachate that was treated to remove 80% of the aggregate of the 5 compounds that are regulated in drinking water would be accepted at the plant. And at a subsequent meeting, the following meeting, it was limited to 1 load per day until the permanent system was constructed. So the summer of 2024, Casella completed the permanent treatment system. And in the fall of 24, we were authorized to accept 1 load per day of treated leachate, which we're currently doing now. Just recently, I requested updated results from Casella of the level of treatment that they were getting from their new facility, which is attached, and it does meet the minimum of 80% aggregate. They're doing a little better than that, actually, somewhere around 85%. And there is a relationship between the city accepting leachate and our disposal of solids. So we take in a lot of septage and municipal sludge, which is other treatment plants that don't have dewatering to sort of dispose of their solids. And all of our solids are land apply or go to the landfill. There was historically a long time ago you could land apply, but because there's also PFAS in the solids from the plant, you can generally you can't land apply anymore. There's maybe 1 or 2 plants that still do it. So they give us a discount because we take leachate. We pay a little over 50% of market rate for disposing of our solids, and we have a lot of them because of the amount of septage that we treat. And they have held that through this whole process. They haven't raised the disposal rate, other than the trucking costs. And so if the city does not take any leachate, most of it goes to the Plattsburgh wastewater plant, which eventually ends up in Lake Champlain, which is the same receiving water body as our plant, but you're adding the trucking. So it's a much longer trucking. So, the environmental impacts to us not taking it are negative in that you have more emissions through trucking. And then as far as the amount of PFAS related to leachate compared to what comes into our plant through the piping system, now that they are fully treating the leachate, it's approximately 3% of the PFAS. This is assuming we're at max capacity of around 30,000 gallons a day or 4 loads a day of leachate. That would be 3% of the PFAS would be from leachate, and 97% would be through the influent pipes. So it's now that it's treated, it's a very small fraction of the amount of PFAS that the plant's discharging. So what I'm proposing tonight is that council authorize DPW to accept up to 2 loads a day. The reason we're not requesting 4 loads at this time is because our disinfection system, which is ultraviolet disinfection, it's aged out. It's planned to be replaced in the next project, but because we can't get parts for it anymore, but it is functioning fine. We don't have any violations or anything like that, but we don't want to go up to the full 4 loads until that system is upgraded. So the request tonight, our suggestion is that council authorize DPW to take up to 2 loads a day of treated leachate from Casella.
And would that get us up to 200,000 a year instead of 100,000 a year?
Correct.
I think this is a great presentation. I think that what we've done over the years has worked in terms of getting a reduction of PFAS as high as we can, with the supporting Casella to do that. One of the things that the figures that you point out, the percentage of the PFAS and the leachate versus the percentage of our own waste is the PFAS is not something that somebody else is doing to us. We're all a cause of that problem, but with the products we make and the products we buy and everything that gets flushed down the toilets. So I think this is a pretty clear win for us to do this. Councilman Sal.
Thanks, Kurt. I'm just trying to refresh my memory from the last presentation when Kinsella was here. Couple of questions. Does Plattsburgh require PFAS removal? Or
They do not.
They do not.
No.
So would Casella stop treating it and just ship it to Plattsburgh without treating it?
No, they're committed to.
They're treating
doing
it
their
all.
part. They're gonna treat it, well, yeah, they treat everything that comes to us. I believe they are treating all their leachate. I'm not 100% sure, but certainly all of it that comes to us and what they can to Plattsburgh as well. So they're not gonna change, whether we take it or not, they're still gonna continue treating for PFAS.
And how do we continue to monitor the PFAS level, load by load? How do we, do they measure it every time, every day and ship it, or is it an occasional thing, or?
Yeah, it would be, yeah, so the results take a long time to get from the test. So, and they only have a, limited storage volume at the landfill. So what we were suggesting is like a quarterly sample results will be provided to the city.
And last question, what the system that we would require to be able to take more loads would cost us what?
So that's the planned upgrade that we're about to start final design on.
Oh, okay.
I think it's somewhere around 1.5 million, but we have to do it anyway, just because that system's no longer supported for the manufacturer, so you can't get replacement parts anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Kurt, this isn't directly on point, but since you're here talking about the sewer plant, are we still having the issues with the odor at the plant?
So we haven't had documented complaints. Also, part of the scope of the project is to treat odors.
Thanks. Council, anything else? Any comments or questions from members of the public? Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve as suggested, as recommended.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thanks, Kurt. All right. We're up to city council reports. I'm not sure whose turn it is. Helen, I'll start at your end tonight.
No report.
Ben.
No report.
Jim.
I'll just say that I went to the trash tramps presentation. The city was well represented. Kelly had almost their whole staff there, it seemed. And it was really well done, well put together. And I just have to say, it was fun going to a city event that had no complaints, no problems, no infighting. Everybody was happy. And it was like, yeah, we could finally sing Kumbaya, hold hands, and walk off together. So it was just a terrific event.
Thanks, Jim. So.
No report.
No report.
Adrian.
I'll just give a quick update on the Child Care Task Force. So we finished up our engagement with Children Finance. Wait, what is it? First Children's Finance. Sorry, I always get them. First Children's Finance. So we engage with them to provide the task force with data on where we are now in terms of childcare gaps and opportunities in central Vermont. And so the task force is going to meet again to look at the report and decide, is it a good opportunity to come and report to council as like a stopgate of what they've learned, and then potentially seek recommendations and build more excitement around that committee, because it's small. But the recommendations are really good based on the data. So that might be coming in the next few weeks, but it's not, urgent because we are going into budget season. And we do have our economic subcommittee meeting tomorrow night. So just wanted to give a quick update on those. Please.
Great, thanks. I have a couple of things to mention in the mayor's report. One is I received a letter and a check from Joe Troiano, the executive director of the Montpelier Housing Authority, sending us a check for 14,000 and change for the payment in lieu of taxes for Pioneer Apartments. They always come through with payment in lieu of taxes, and they may be the only nonprofit in this city that
As far
does.
as I know, they are.
There was a time when the Unitarian Church was paying $50 a year or something, but so far as I know, Montpelier Housing Authority always does, and I like to give them credit for that. Two, I've received letters from some of the organizations that got funded by the community fund, and so since we received the letters, I want to mention we got letters from Home Share Vermont, Vermont Humanities, Vermont Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired, and North Branch Nature Center. And they didn't have to do it, but I certainly appreciate it. We'll say these are now public records, and so I don't know if John should get them or Kelly should get them, but I'll pass them to you, and they should just be somewhere so they're accessible in case people want to see them. And then the last thing is that Jim and Kelly maybe both mentioned trash traps. I happened to be on the radio this morning on WVMT drive time program with Dan Feliciano, and the first thing he said to me, I was just there to talk about Montpelier in general. The first thing he said to me was how great he was here in Montpelier recently. They thought the city looks great. The fact that the graffiti removal team is on top of getting the graffiti covered up or removed when it goes up is really left a positive impression to him. The graffiti removal and the trash pickup has been a tremendous improvement. And one of the things we talked about is that I think we all know that if you go into a place where there's a lot of graffiti, it just makes people feel like you've lost control of the environment, and it makes people feel scared to even be there. And so another big thumbs up for those guys.
You should have seen their presentation of about 50 photos of what they've done.
Yeah,
it was just awesome.
And that's what I've got. Now to the city clerk.
I just want to mention that the ballots did come in for the November elections, so they are available. We got the first wave of early ballot requests out in the mail today. Also mention, because I'm getting a few questions about it, and I'm hearing more about it, and what can you tell me about it? I even got one from someone in the local. But got to be really careful about this. It's not, even if it's a city thing, I shouldn't talk too much about it, but it's really up to the Career Center to make its case and get that information out there, that I probably shouldn't be doing it because I don't want to slip in any way and be seen as putting my finger on the scale at all. So I want to apologize up front to everyone listening for the unhelpfulness that I will be providing. When you say unhelpfulness, the helpfulness I won't be.
Thanks, Sean. Kelly.
So just a few things, earlier tonight in the budget presentation, Sarah mentioned the CAT meeting, which has been scheduled for noon next Wednesday. So I hope for the members that are part of that committee that works. So we just went ahead and scheduled it. So I just want to flag that for everybody. And then we can maybe work on getting an invite to you so it's on your calendars. Also, just, I'm just gonna, I just a little bit of a list here. The holiday schedule, just kind of to take the pulse of, how you'd like to handle, meetings, that are during sort of the Thanksgiving or Christmas holiday. We don't have to decide tonight, but, as we're talking about the budget and talking about what's coming down the line, Thanksgiving and Christmas, we might want to shift those meetings. So in November, I think probably likely we like to propose meeting 2 weeks in a row. So it would be the 12th and the 19th instead of the 24th. And then, 27th. And then for the, December meeting, it would be the 10th and the 17th instead of the Christmas week. So there would be those 2 meetings right together. And then I also mentioned that just because, at tonight's meeting, there was a lot on the agenda and we got through it, which was amazing. And, really been kind of contemplating how to get things in front of you in a way that's helpful, but then also very productive, and so that we can get through things. We've got a lot to cover. That's a long-winded way of saying that. I think we're going to try to work with the schedule that we have. I'm going to try to rearrange some things on the docket, but if we do need to have additional meetings related to the budget, we can and will. That's why in January, we'll likely be proposing that there would be maybe 3 meetings leading up to needing to approve the budget. So that would be the 7th, 14th, and 21st. So just to kind of, we're thinking about how to get everything scheduled, but we'll also be bringing you presentations like we did tonight so that we can kind of get you prepped. And then any questions that you have, please send them along. We're committed to the process and just making sure that you get what you need. So that's just a rough outline of, budget stuff, holiday schedule. That seems like that works for folks. So I'm gonna maybe just kind of like go with that. And I can bring a item forward just to get it approved if you'd like as well. Let's see. So, while we're on the subject of meetings, because who doesn't like to talk about a meeting? Our last night in this room was tonight. And so we'll be going back upstairs. And so I just wanted to remind folks of that. I did get an update on the elevator at City Hall because I thought you might be interested in that. So we have that ordered, but it's gonna take a little bit of time. So we were projecting that it would be January or February, and it's looking like it will probably likely be the tail end of February. I know. So I just, we're hopeful for town meeting day, John. So just, making sure we're transparent about like where we're at with that. And I know, but I just wanted to also just, put that out there publicly in terms of like, we are trying to get the elevator fixed. There will also be more to come on a future agenda item related to FEMA rebuilds. We did get some positive news in our weekly meeting that, things are advancing to a question phase, which means that the package that we've given them is good. So I'm pleased with that, and I'll put a little bit about that maybe even in the Manager's Weekly, but more to come in terms of just an update on the Stevens and Associates report where we are, and then what we would be doing next to rebuild at City Hall. So that's a whole other area that, we'll need to address. So just wanted to say that. And then the last bit of good news, Chris and I were up at Country Club Road today, and Turtle Island is moving in. And so that's really, really exciting. They are going to be doing their final walkthrough Friday. And then once they are up and running, they would like to do an open house and a ribbon cutting. Yes. So it's just really nice that's happening. The space is so nice in terms of just, it's light. They have the space that they need, and there's opportunity there, I think, for children and families that, Turtle Island, where it was, and Elm Street was pretty sweet and special to the community, but I think this location will be too. So that's what I have.
Thanks, Kelly. All right, and with that, this is early. 10:08, and we are adjourned.